Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1901. The Forbidden Area Opened. The so-called astronomical transit was the phenomenon referred to the moment when some star moved between the sun and the earth, covering a part of the sun's light and creating a huge black spot shadow. Such a phenomenon wasn't a rare sight in the divine land. That said, the astronomical transit phenomenon was particularly special in time C. Every few years, a star would completely block out the sun's light. The shadow of the black spot formed would cover the entire time C. And every time, the star that caused the astronomical transit was a different one. More so, the 9 stars that appeared before the sun-blind race's leader took turns causing the astronomical transit. What most people didn't necessarily know was that when the sunlight above the time C was blocked out, it was also the moment when the time C, otherwise known as this big forbidden area, was opened. The 9 stars represented the 9 different entrances to the time C. Across all the divine land, there were several different forbidden areas of various sizes and they were constantly being explored by the powerful clans. As soon as any divine might coins had been condensed, they were snatched by the true gods from the place. The less divine might coins that existed, the more precious they became. For this reason, true gods searched for them crazily, and eventually, it caused a vicious cycle. For the time C though, this forbidden area was only opened on astronomical transit day. Throughout any other period of time, no one ever traveled there to explore. The divine might coins that were formed would slowly pile up, and to the true gods of the powerful clans, the place was genuinely a huge treasure trove. All the powerful clans hoped for the possibility that every one of their warriors from the floating islands would enter the time C on astronomical transit day, and collect the numerous divine might coins. Unfortunately though, this would never occur because the sun-blind race had a harsh rule. Only the true gods they invited were eligible to participate in the astronomical transit day celebration. As for the rule the sun-blind race had to invite their guests, now, that was still unclear. In general, the stronger their strength and the more talented they were, the more chances they had of being invited. However, occasionally, there were certain obscure people from the floating islands that also happened to be invited to the event. No one really understood why, or how. At the beginning, the rich clans would continuously organize a batch of true gods that waited to be invited by the sun-blind race on astronomical transit day, but the sun-blind race still stuck to their usual rule for inviting guests. In the end, the rich clans on the floating islands gave up their tactics. On astronomical transit day, anyone who was confident that they would be invited by the sun-blind race had the permission to wait by the time C. The shadow cast by the water-luminous star quickly spread throughout the time C. It blocked the sunlight from the sun-blind race's island, the floating islands, as well as the entire time C. The whole time C was quickly and totally immersed in darkness. Of course, this wasn't absolute darkness. The scorching sun's rays could still penetrate the water-luminous star and thus, a dim light still shone through. Phew. Once the sky had completely dimmed out, the sun-blind race lit up their torches one after another, and as they did this, they began to scream in a rhythmic way. Wow! Once the water-luminous star had fully transited the sun, all the sun-blind members began to dance in joy. The celebration had begun. The sun-blind members were all devout. This was their unique holiday, but to outsiders, it was generally considered a little boring. Both the holy beings and the demi-holy beings had their eyes closed in order to rest their mind, while the true gods were quietly making their preparations before the time C forbidden land was opened. The amount of divine might coins that had been accumulated there for several years now was astonishing. They had no choice but to be fully prepared. Nellie, Rochelle called out for her sister suddenly. Nellie turned around and asked, "What's up, Rochelle?" "After entering the time C forbidden land, I have something else to do. If you have time, keep an eye on that guy for me, will you?" Rochelle asked. "Do I need to force him to act or anything?" Nellie asked in return. "No, you only need to keep an eye on him," replied Rochelle, shaking her head from side to side. "You don't believe in my strength," Nellie muttered bitterly. Despite saying this, Nelly also knew that if Zen really was the anonymous man in the arena of legends, she probably was no match for him. After all, when Zen had still been a proving godly warrior, he had defeated her. Now, he had become a true god. Her chances would be extremely slim. It has nothing to do with your strength. I just have to verify something, and then I'll kill him immediately, Rochelle stated seriously. Kill him, Nelly repeated, in confusion. Although she had been defeated by the anonymous man in the past, there was no need to kill him. Honestly speaking, there wasn't much hatred standing between her and anonymous man, anyway. Upon noticing Nelly's expression, Rochelle said with a slight smile, there are certain things you just don't need to know everything about. Disappointment etched itself on Nelly's face. She looked at Zen again, and she felt that Zen was more than just the anonymous man. After all, there were others who had tried every method possible to conceal their names when entering the arena of legends, and they somewhat all had their hidden secrets. The sun-blind race's dull and boring ceremony finally came to an end. Many of the true gods present wore an expression of excitement on their faces. Of course, a few of them had no idea of what astronomical transit day was for, and they stood there clueless, wondering what they were even doing here. In fact, a few of the true gods even thought that the only harvest they obtained from the event was that they had seen the holy beings of the clans. The woman in white gently waved her hand, and the water-luminous star at the center of the 9 pagodas emitted a faint light. This light became brighter and brighter by the second. As the light continued to glow, it equally began to emit a dazzling blue light, and finally it formed a strange passage. Ah, isn't this a passage to the Forbidden Land? A true god couldn't help but exclaim his surprise. Perhaps, just like Zen, this true god simply hadn't expected to be invited here by the sun-blind race. He had no idea what was going to happen next, and thus, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise as he saw the entrance to the forbidden area suddenly appear. One of the true gods standing beside him gave him a hard stare, probably feeling that he had made a fuss. The female leader of the sun-blind race said flatly, yes. The forbidden area will be opened every time we hold an astronomical transit day celebration. You can explore the area and take away all the treasures you come by in it. Pure pleasure appeared on the true god's face. Previously, he had thought that the astronomical transit day celebration was extremely boring, and couldn't figure out why so many people were still so excited to be here. Now that he knew the reasons, he only naturally felt very excited. When the azure passageway had finished forming and became completely stable, all of the consummate true gods present exchanged glances. Whoosh! Rochelle was the first one to rush into the passageway, without a second's hesitation. Shortly after, the consummate true gods of other powerful clans began to fly into the passage, one after the next. Although there were no written rules about who should enter first, the true gods present still entered the passageway according to their cultivation levels. The ones with higher cultivation levels always had priority, no matter the situation or event at hand. The consummate true gods' goal was not the amazing quantity of divine might coins. The consummate true gods were followed by top-rank true gods, and then mid-rank true gods, and finally, the low-rank true gods. Laquisha, on her behalf, didn't wait for Elena, or any of the others in fact. With her back to Zen, she secretly kept an eye on him. What she observed though was nothing more than Elena, Kelsey and Zen muttering to each other. She didn't stop before them, but rushed into the passage on her own instead. Ah, why didn't Laquisha wait for us? Elena's mouth was wide open in surprise. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Zen walked toward the passageway with Elena and Kelsey following right behind him. This was the first time that Zen had entered a forbidden area in the Divine Land. He was amazed. According to his judgment, the Divine Land's forbidden areas were also places imagined by all true gods, which were made from the faith energy. He wondered what the forbidden area in the Time Sea was like. Just as Zen entered though, he saw something that astonished him even more. Except for the consummate true gods who had already disappeared without a trace, the true gods that had rushed inside earlier were all crazily gathering the divine might coins on the ground. Chapter 1902, The Time Ghost. The Time Sea Forbidden Land had been closed for a long time, and there was a huge amount of divine might coins piling up there as a consequence. As soon as Zen stepped into the Forbidden Land, he found an entire mountain of these divine might coins at the entrance. 9 roads led to the Forbidden Land. The road that was activated by the water-luminous star had been closed for 72 years, since the astronomical transit day, usually held every 8 years, had been celebrated 9 times after this road opened last time. The number of divine might coins that were collecting on the road was truly vast. Having just entered, the true gods could still restrain themselves. They only used their space rings to collect the divine might coins, and there was no scramble to try to obtain them. When Laquisha saw the divine might coins, her eyes flashed greedily. Her body poised, ready to rush forward. She waved her sleeve dramatically. "Take them," she yelled. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, a violent gust of wind blew over the land. Some of the divine might coins on both sides of the road were lifted by the wind and flew directly up Laquisha's huge sleeve. The true gods, who were picking up the divine might coins, turned their heads and glared at her, shocked and offended. They had come to the Time-Sea Forbidden Land also to obtain the divine might coins, but there remained rules that had to be followed. If they used their skills as Laquisha had done, to collect the divine might coins, they would probably begin fighting with each other on the spot. "Hey, girl, you are from the Han clan, right? I'm warning you, if you continue to act like this, don't blame me for being rude to you," a mid-rank true god from the Tang clan said condescendingly. The other true gods, too, stared at Laquisha with hostility in their eyes. Even though Laquisha held a special position within the Han clan, the true gods who had been invited there with her also possessed considerable power and influence. The majority of them were the core disciples of the rich clans on the floating islands. Thus, their status was not lower than that of Laquisha. Complacent, Laquisha just sneered and shouted in an arrogant voice, "I like to collect these divine might coins in this way, and what I do is none of your business. What can you do to me?" As soon as she had finished speaking, she waved her sleeve again. The fabric lifted up lightly, and another gust of wind blew, funneling even more divine might coins up her long sleeve. Zen, Kelsey and Elena exchanged looks of helplessness. Laquisha was not short of divine might coins. She was from a rich clan and was not in need of any more wealth. It seemed as though she was recklessly trying to flaunt her power before the true gods, demonstrating her defiant and rebellious nature. But she was no longer on the Han clan's floating island. On foreign ground, the elites from the rich clans on the floating islands would likely not be accommodating towards her. The true god surnamed Tang was visibly furious. His figure flashed, as he charged towards Laquisha. He clenched his right fist, and the blood vessels on the back of his hand instantly turned into a black mass, as if there was something viscous and dark flowing through his very flesh. "How dare you! Stop, she is the princess of our clan." Elena and Kelsey shouted at the same time. "I don't care which clan you are from. Who do you think you are?" The true god with the surname of Tang didn't care who Laquisha was. He even sped up his pace. He was a warrior, one of the new disciples of Clark. With the support of Clark behind him, he felt he had no reason to take Laquisha seriously. Seemingly no more than a hair's breadth away from Laquisha, a figure suddenly appeared between her and the charging true god. It was none other than Langston. "Frederick, these are just some divine might coins. There is still an enormous amount of them on the way. You don't need to fight here, do you?" Langston said calmly. When Frederick Tang saw Langston, his expression softened a little. "If you say so, I will not punish her. But you can clearly see that she is trying to cause trouble on purpose. I will not let her get away with it the next time if she continues." Without waiting for Langston to respond, Frederick Tang turned around and left. Langston turned to look at Laquisha with a smile, looking at her as one would regard a small child who had misbehaved. "This is your first time here, right? There are many conventional rules here. If we see a certain number of divine might coins, we must divide them equally. We all want to collect the divine might coins using our abilities. But we are absolutely forbidden to use our theurgy to monopolize them." The purpose of establishing the Hall of Holy Beings on the Time Sea was to set rules for the various rich clans on the floating islands. Some of the rules were written on the ruling slate, but not all of them were recorded on it, as it would cost a lot to engrave every single rule on the slate. It was a common practice for disciples of the rich clans to distribute the divine might coin in the Forbidden Land, according to set proportions. After all, it was extremely dangerous to wander in the Forbidden Land. If there was a dispute because of the divine might coins, the disciples from the rich clans would fight with each other all day long. This was not what the members of the rich clans wanted. Of course, this kind of rule was usually established for warriors with equivalent levels of strength. Killing people for divine might coins was still common in the Forbidden Lands. Seeing the figure of a man shielding her from the charging Frederick Tang, Laquisha had been overjoyed. However, realizing that the man was, in fact, Langston, her heart had filled with disappointment. She turned around and looked at Zen. Seeing him standing still, indifferent to her, made her even more disappointed. Turning back to Langston, she spoke to him with a fake smile. "Thank you for reminding me. It is indeed the first time that I have entered the Forbidden Land. If that's the case, just follow me. Even the first grade and second grade sacred places are full of danger and uncertainty, and many true gods find their death there. The Time Sea Forbidden Land is even more dangerous, Langston said gently. Okay, Laquisha nodded, her voice impassive. Last time, Langston had a big conflict with Laquisha. After that, when he came back home to the Leng clan, his father had taught him a lesson. Langston was curious about the attitude of his father, Jeremiah. He was not inferior to Samuel. To the contrary, in terms of clan background and overall strength, the Leng clan far surpassed the Han clan. Moreover, it was obvious the Han clan was trying to curry favor with the Leng clan by arranging the marriage between Langston and Laquisha. At the thought of this, Langston became even more confused, wondering why his father was so desperate for this marriage to be successful. As an arrogant man, Langston wouldn't act humbly and obediently in front of a woman. But since his father repeatedly reminded him to do so, he had to comply. Nevertheless, looking at Laquisha's sweet smile, Langston felt satisfied and proud. Zen stood still with a straight face. Kelsey and Elena, on the other hand, were surprised by Laquisha's attitude. They knew clearly how much Laquisha hated Langston. They couldn't understand why Laquisha suddenly changed her attitude and spoke to Langston in a friendly manner. What's wrong with Laquisha? Kelsey asked. It seems that she gets mad at Thad and is doing this deliberately, said Elena, pursing her lips. Kelsey and Elena turned to look at Zen at the same time. Zen walked forward, his face expressionless. Hurry up and collect the Divine Might coins, he said coolly. Otherwise, they will be taken away by others. His expression remained cold and unchanging. Elena and Kelsey followed Zen immediately, but they continued to watch him closely from behind, whispering to each other. Do you think Thad has any idea? Maybe he is just jealous. Although the two girls' voices were very quiet, Zen could still hear what they were saying. He said nothing, only smirking to himself. As for Nellie, she was a little further away, busy collecting the rest of the Divine Might coins while keeping her eyes on Zen. She was annoyed that Langston had suddenly interfered in the conflict between Laquisha and Frederick Tang. Rochelle had instructed Nellie to keep a close eye on Zen. Before Langston so inconveniently stepped in, she had been convinced that Zen would fight Frederick Tang. This would have been a great opportunity for Nellie to observe Zen. The more she watched Zen fight, the closer she would come to discovering his weakness. It doesn't matter, she told herself. The Time Sea is very dangerous. There will still be plenty of chances for me to see him fighting. After putting all the Divine Might coins around her into her space ring, Nellie also followed the others to move forward. Inside the Time Sea Forbidden Land, there was another strange world. The time loss seemed to be ubiquitous in this forbidden land. The earth under their feet, the high mountains in the distance, and the trees around them were all flashing with multicolored light. It seemed that everything in the Forbidden Land relied on the power of time. The Divine Might coins were scattered on the two sides of the road activated by the water luminous star. Many of the true gods kept stopping along their way to collect these Divine Might coins. Zen naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity either. Along the way, he had himself pick up around 3,000 Divine Might coins. Even for the disciples from rich clans on the floating islands, 3,000 Divine Might coins was a huge sum of money. Some true gods might have accumulated over 10,000 Divine Might coins along the way. As for the consummate true gods, such as Rochelle and Alfredo, they didn't even bother to pick up the Divine Might coins. After entering into the Forbidden Land, they flew away immediately. Obviously, they were looking to find something more important than just Divine Might coins. No wonder all the powerful and rich clans attached great importance to the astronomical transit day. When they reached the end of the road, a true god suddenly shouted, "Oh no! We are out of luck. This time, a group of time ghosts are blocking the way. I'm afraid we'll be in trouble." Zen raised his head and saw a group of blue humanoid creatures flying back and forth at the open intersection in front of them, blocking their way. Chapter 1903, Surrounded. These human-shaped creatures, which were floating about, were like ghosts. The aura emitted by them was not very powerful. Oh, what bad luck. Elena pursed her lips when she saw these time ghosts. What's wrong? These things seem to be quite weak, Zen commented curiously. Zen could conclude from the aura of the time ghosts that their strength was equivalent to that of ordinary evil ghosts, so it wouldn't be too difficult to kill them. While it's true that these time ghosts aren't strong, their bodies are stuck in another time, so it is impossible for anyone to hurt them. Moreover, once you are possessed by a time ghost, it will drag you to the gap in time and rip you into two, said Elena. Evidently, she had prepared quite well for her trip to the Time Sea Forbidden Land. This explained why the Time Sea had earned a reputation of being so horrible. The entire time sea was made up of countless broken time fragments. Each wave represented a different time period. This meant that if someone fell into the time sea, their body would fall into different times. If one compared time with space, the consequence of the fall was equivalent to their body being shredded apart by countless space cracks. However, the time law was much more domineering than space cracks. Zen had been able to resist the space cracks long ago. Even though the space cracks in the Divine Land were more powerful than those in the universe where he was from, they were still incomparable to the time cracks. These so-called cracks were not actual cracks, but rather a concept, which formed when the time was split into different time periods. Fortunately, there were many mighty warriors among this group of true gods. With so many top-ranked true gods and mid-ranked true gods present, naturally someone or the other would figure out a way. So Zen was not worried. The group of true gods, including Pascal, discussed and debated for a while, and then someone stepped out. Isn't this just a bunch of silly time ghosts? They are not particularly intelligent. I'll just draw them away. The one who spoke was a man with black hair, who looked very young, but was already a top-ranked true god. Top-ranked true gods could fly in the forbidden area, but this place was filled with traps. They didn't dare to run around recklessly like the consummate true gods. Many true gods were happy to hear the black-haired young man's words. It was a good thing that someone had taken the initiative to lead the way. The black-haired young man walked up to the path and then he whipped out a small bamboo flute from his chest. He shook the flute gently, and many gold bits fell out of it. The gold bits turned out to be 6 or 7 human-shaped puppets. Judging by the appearance of the puppets, they didn't seem extraordinary. However, after the black-haired young man made a mysterious gesture, an invisible force spread out. When everyone present experienced this powerful force, they all had the illusion as if they had lost the control of themselves. Great manipulating way? Zen asked. In the arena of legends, Zen had experienced the same kind of power, but at that time, the one he had encountered was a low-ranked true god, who was far from being as domineering as the black-haired young man. Elena nodded. He is Jolyon Fang from Fang Clan. He is obsessed with making puppets and has cultivated the great manipulating way to a very high level. His puppets are also very powerful. Each puppet is as strong as a mid-rank true god. It is said that he has a very special puppet that can even kill top-rank true gods. Some of the godly ways appeared weak, but if one cultivated them and reached a very high level, they could also prove to be very powerful. When Jolyon Fang gave life to the puppets, an extremely strong aura emitted from the bodies of the puppets, which was stronger than that of a mid-rank true god. Were there strong souls hidden in the puppets? Or did Jolyon Fang use some special methods to give them such strong aura? Nobody knew the answers to these mysteries. Go! The black-haired young man pointed at the time ghosts, and the puppets immediately dashed towards them. Bang! 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 The puppets produced metallic sounds as they ran, making a huge racket. One of the puppets waved its arm, and a circular quiver appeared under its arm. The quiver shot a number of golden arrows at the time ghosts. Swish! 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 The puppets caught the attention of the time ghosts. Buzz! Everyone felt a thundering in their ears. It was the cries of the time ghosts. They flew towards the golden puppets. Everybody was confused and impressed in equal parts at the way Jolyon Fang controlled the puppets. The puppets were as agile and responsive as if they were his own arms. When Jolyon Fang saw that the puppets had drawn the attention of all the time ghosts, his eyes flashed with excitement. With a sudden wave of his hand, the puppets suddenly turned around and rushed off in another direction. The time ghosts gathered at the place where the 9 paths to the time sea forbidden land converged. Jolyon Fang led this group of time ghosts to another direction. However, in this process, a puppet, which was a little slower than the rest, was caught by a time ghost. Immediately Jolyon Fang lost control of this puppet. The puppet spun manically on the spot a few times and then got chopped into segments from its head to toe before crumbling to pieces and falling on the ground. The metal fragments scattered all over the ground. Seeing this scene, many of the true gods' faces darkened. All the puppets that Jolyon Fang had sent out were created from the most sturdy materials in the Divine Land. But once they were seized by the time ghosts, they were actually so fragile. Buzz! The time ghosts were very excited and kept pursuing the puppets. The road in front of them was clear. Now, it is the right time. Jolyon Fang yelled and bolted out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The other true gods also followed suit and sprinted out. Thank goodness for Jolyon, otherwise, it would be very difficult to lure these time ghosts away, said a true god, who had rushed in front of them. However, before he could complete his praise, his face darkened and he lost his words. A huge army of time ghosts had appeared again. How come there are so many of them? It can't be that the first stage of the Time Sea is so dangerous. Let's retreat. Those who had the qualifications to enter the Time Sea Forbidden Land were the core disciples of the various rich clans. They were the elites of their respective floating islands. The Time Sea Forbidden Land was dangerous, but these dangers were manageable. As long as they didn't break into the third stage of the Time Sea, they would be safe. Therefore, the holy emperors were also willing to allow their children and disciples to enter the Time Sea in order to cultivate. After all, other than the divine might coins, they could also come across some pretty good opportunities. But this time, there were many time ghosts in the forbidden area, which caught the true gods assembled there off guard. Defeating the time ghosts seemed like an insurmountable task to some true gods, so they chose to retreat. However, just as they took a few steps back, they saw a group of time ghosts behind them. The time ghosts that were lured away by the puppets had already chopped up those puppets into pieces and were coming to surround them. All the true gods were trapped in a dilemma as they had no way back. Elena's and Kelsey's faces turned ghastly pale. They didn't take the journey seriously, thinking that even if there were really any dangers, it would be thrilling and exciting. They had never thought that they might lose their lives here. Chapter 1904. Supreme Treasure of Belief. Outside the Forbidden Land, the holy beings noticed this peculiar scene. This made all of them confused, causing their long faces. After all, it was true that many true gods that wandered in the Forbidden Land were descendants of the holy beings. What's wrong with the Forbidden Land? Why are there so many time ghosts? A holy being asked. Normally, the first stage of the Time Sea Forbidden Land housed no more than 8 ghosts, so when the holy beings noticed the increase in time ghosts, all of them were alarmed. The Sun-Blind race's leader wore a mask so her expression was hidden from everyone. It seems that the level of difficulty in the Time Sea Forbidden Land has increased, she said. The controller of each Forbidden Land had the ability to manipulate the difficulty of the Forbidden Land to a certain extent, and ever since the Forbidden Lands appeared in the Divine Land, their difficulty had only constantly increased as the space they took up became bigger and bigger. For instance, the Soul Wilderness, a level 6 Forbidden Land, located in the Spiritual Soul region, at first only took up about 1/10 of the said region. However, every divine era, it would expand and encroach on a portion of the Spiritual Soul region. The Soul Wilderness had expanded at a terrifyingly fast rate, and now, it covered the entire Spiritual Soul region and was still expanding closer to its 2 neighboring regions. The divine citizens living in the 2 regions had no choice but to migrate in fear that they would be caught within the Forbidden Land. Other Forbidden Lands like the Swirl Forest and the Time Sea were also expanding. Day by day, the Time Sea took up more area, steadily growing and never stopping. This birthed a belief that the entire Divine Land would be completely devoured by the Forbidden Lands one day. Isn't the difficulty within your control? Another holy being asked. The leader shook her head. No, the situation is different this time. It seems that a new supreme treasure of belief has appeared. A supreme treasure of belief? You mean a new supreme treasure of belief has appeared in the Time Sea? What is its level? Her words had caused a concerned chattering from the holy beings. Even Nicholas had black and white mist swirling in his eyes, evidence of his astonishment. Majority of the weapons in the Divine Land were supreme primordial weapons. Before the creation of supreme chaotic weapons, most of the weapons in the Divine Land such as sabers, swords, and axes had been supreme primordial weapons. But after the appearance of the supreme chaotic weapons, the status of the supreme primordial weapons declined. However, both presented their own pros and cons. The supreme primordial weapons were better in their profound foundation, while the supreme chaotic weapons were powerful because they allowed the indirect use of strong chaotic energy. But compared to the supreme treasures of belief, all these weapons made by the weapon refiners were not even worth mentioning. When the Forbidden Lands appeared in his inner world, Zen had managed to figure out the origin of the Forbidden Lands in the Divine Land. He found that all the Forbidden Lands in the Divine Land were formed by the imagination of countless divine citizens. In other words, they were created by faith energy. The supreme treasure of belief was the same. They were special and powerful weapons thought up by countless divine citizens. Each treasure had its own level of power, which the true gods in the Divine Land associated with that of the Forbidden Lands. Even the Forbidden Land with the lowest level could produce a supreme treasure of belief. And while it would only be at level 1, owning this treasure would be equivalent to becoming controller of this level 1 Forbidden Land. Similarly, a level 2 Forbidden Land could only produce one level 2 supreme treasure of belief. However, level 1 supreme treasures might exist as well. Although few people knew about the Time Sea Forbidden Land, the concept of time deeply instilled in everyone's minds. Every time they thought about time, it turned into a strand of faith energy which gathered in the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. Currently, the Time-Sea Forbidden Land could easily match any other Level 6 Forbidden Lands. A Level 6 Supreme Treasure of Belief had long appeared in the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, and after the Sun-Blind race's leader got it, she became controller of the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. The Level 6 Supreme Treasures of Belief were known as the most powerful weapons to exist and could affect the entire Divine Land. A second Level 6 Supreme Treasure of Belief would not appear in the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, but there might still be a Level 5 or Level 4 treasure. And while these treasures didn't have the ability to control living creatures in the Divine Land like the Time Sword of Gods, they still had many powerful Thurgies. Even the holy beings from the large clans on the floating islands were rarely presented with the opportunity to obtain a Supreme Treasure of Belief. For example, the holy being of the Qin clan had a Level 1 Supreme Treasure of Belief, an S-shaped jade, which was obtained from a Level 2 Forbidden Land. It was said that in order to buy this treasure, the Qin clan had spent a large amount of divine might coins, enough to modify 2 words on the ruling slate. However, while the Level 1 Supreme Treasure of Belief might have a relatively powerful Thurgy, it had no substantial help to a holy being. Thus, the holy being of the Qin clan wore it simply as an ornament, and for a time, became a laughingstock in the Hall of Holy Beings. Considering the powerful Thurgies the treasures could employ, it was only natural that even a Level 1 Supreme Treasure of Belief garnered so much attention from a holy being. And so when the holy beings heard what the female leader said, they all showed great interest. "I'm not sure," the leader of the Sun-Blind race shook her head. "It could be a Level 3 treasure. Maybe even a Level 4. A Level 4 Supreme Treasure of Belief. What good fortune. This is part of their training. The Time-Sea Forbidden Land is probably 10 times more dangerous than before, but the benefits are 1,000 times greater." You're right. Initially, the holy beings wanted to ask their descendants to retreat from the Forbidden Land. The Time-Sea Forbidden Land was very dangerous, and every day, it only grew more dangerous than before. There was a great possibility they would meet their eternal end if they stayed. But even if these holy beings wanted their descendants to always be safe and sound, they also wanted them to seize these rare opportunities even more. While the holy beings were discussing outside, the true gods in the Forbidden Land were faced with life and death crises. There were so many time ghosts surrounding them that it was almost impossible to escape. Even Zen worried about their terrible predicament. If their enemies were real creatures, they might still be able to fight. However, a strange creature like the Time Ghost had no real existence and therefore, could not be fought. The only thing they could do was to escape. But how? Scared, Elena and Kelsey leaned against Zen. Kelsey couldn't even stop trembling. She had never been to the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land before, and had not once thought that she would face death one day. Elena, who had at least explored the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, was considerably calmer than Kelsey. The other true gods were equally horrified. If they were not able to handle this, none of them would survive. "I'll draw them away while you escape." Just then, a top-rank true god stood out from the crowd. A top-rank true god had the ability to fly. If he drew away the time ghosts, the others would have a chance to escape, however, it would be extremely dangerous for him to do so. This top-rank true god, who they soon learned was Reginald, came from the War God Hall. As he stepped forward for the tough task, all the other true gods present revealed a look of gratitude on their faces. Even Woodruff, the leader of the War God Hall and one of the 3 holy beings of the Moon Clan, wore a proud expression on his face. "There's no coward in our War God Hall." It was at this moment that the time ghosts flocked over to the crowd. At the same time, Reginald shouted his battle cry and charged at the ghosts in front of him. Such a strong fighting intent. "His Thurgy is exactly the same as Blades, but he's even more powerful," murmured Zen, eyes shining with admiration. This top-rank true god really had the courage to stand up for them at this crucial moment. Reginald's overwhelming fighting intent had successfully attracted the attention of most of the time ghosts closest to them. Then, like a rock spreading its wings, he soared up into the sky. After the time ghosts chased after him, it was easy for everyone to see a path of escape in front of them. However, the time ghosts behind the crowd saw them and rushed towards them at a blinding speed. Chapter 1905, Divine Time Temple. Charge. There was no hesitation in the true god's steps as they all rushed forward. "Follow me," it was casually said by the still calm Langston to Laquisha, who was behind him. The expression on her face was blank as she galloped ahead. But she was still worried about Elena and Kelsey, so she turned to look at them from time to time. Zen, Elena, and Kelsey all moved behind her but kept a certain distance. The time ghosts behind them began to take the later true gods as their first targets. Buzz. A time ghost suddenly came closer and its body coiled around a mid-rank true god. Ah, help! The mid-rank true god screamed in pain and couldn't stop the shaking of his body. Soon, a shallow trace appeared on his head and his solid skull was cut evenly in just a second. Red and white things burst out of it and terrified those who saw it. Puff, puff, puff. More and more traces appeared on the mid-rank true god's body, making more blood spurt from him. The grotesque scene made Kelsey extremely pale, so she activated all of her strength and tried to run as fast as possible. However, in that moment, a low-rank true god beside Kelsey moved a little too slowly, and was entangled by a time ghost. He then grabbed Kelsey's hand almost instinctively. Ah! Kelsey screamed loudly as she tried to break free from the true god's grip, but he was more powerful than she expected and she couldn't get rid of him. 3 time ghosts were about to pounce on Kelsey while she was distracted. Kelsey. There was heavy worry on LaQuisha's face as she turned and rushed towards Kelsey. And there was Elena who stood frozen still from fear. The terrified Kelsey turned to look at Zen, unable to accept that she would die here. Whoosh! Right at the critical moment, Zen flashed and gently pushed his finger forward and pressed on the arm of the low-rank true god. An invisible force came forward and tried to cut the low-rank true god's arm. Crack! The low-rank true god's arm was broken and Zen grabbed Kelsey. He turned around quickly and grasped the shaking Elena. Then he carried them both under his armpits. A huge force erupted from his feet. Whoosh, whoosh, all of the true gods charged forward at their fastest speed to run for their lives. A gust of wind blew past them and it was a low-rank true god who was holding 2 proving godly warriors and speeding away. The speed of the low-rank true god stunned the rest. LaQuisha stared blankly at the scene until Zen rushed to her with his 2 young sisters in tow. He smiled and said, "Run. Don't just stand there. It's none of your business." It was LaQuisha's quick retort but she thought that she overreacted. Zen didn't seem to care about her and he only warned her. That thought made a bitter feeling rise up in her chest. The time ghost's speed was slightly faster than that of the true gods and so anyone who was slow would get attacked and it would be almost impossible to escape. Almost all of the true gods subconsciously raised their speed when they heard a shrill cry from behind them. Even with all of them desperately on the run, Zen's speed was exceptionally fast. His strength burst out and he sprinted to the front of the group. "We're here. The divine time temple's right in front of us. The time ghosts can't enter it." A mid-rank true god shouted. A strange temple appeared in front of them. Even true gods had limited physical strength and as they ran, many looked completely exhausted but those words made all of them brighten up. "Let's go in. We can hide in the divine time temple for a while." Whoosh, 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 all of the true gods sped up once again. Although Zen carried 2 people, his expression didn't change at all and his speed just became faster and faster. He was the first to rush into the divine time temple. Even far outside the Forbidden Land, there were holy beings who paid attention to Zen's actions. But how could a low-rank true god have such great endurance and move so quickly? With those 2 in his arms, he still managed to be the first to enter the temple, the demi-holy being of the Tang clan said curiously. There were some guesses about Zen's identity. Langston and Rochelle might be more knowledgeable about it, but the holy beings didn't pay much attention to things on the floating islands and thus they didn't know of Zen. Perhaps, Joy was the only one who knew the truth. A faint smile hung on her lips as she looked at Zen, but she also couldn't squash the worry in her heart. She wasn't aware that Zen would be invited by the sun-blind race. If he revealed his secret right now, how would he escape from the holy beings? Zen was truly fearless. No one knew what Samuel was thinking about when he stared at Zen, as he looked perfectly calm. Many of the true gods rushed into the divine time temple and looked worn out, except for the top-ranked true gods. Even LaQuisha gasped for air as she circulated the momentum in her body to calm herself down. Even after the last true god dashed into the divine time temple, the time ghosts still continued to rush towards the temple. The dense mass of time ghosts coming over them like the tide made Kelsey and Elena, who managed to calm themselves down, become nervous again. They pinched at Zen's arms in fear. Buzz! Many true gods screamed when the time ghosts reached the divine time temple. It was the first time for many of them to enter the Time Sea Forbidden Land, so it was natural that they were worried. If the time ghosts could really charge in, none of them would be able to escape. But the time ghosts couldn't move forward from the door of the divine time temple. They were densely packed outside, as if an invisible wall had sealed them off. The time ghosts truly were unable to enter the divine time temple. Only then did the true gods heave a sigh of relief. Just like a group of bugs, the time ghosts crowded in a heap and looked just as disgusting. Everyone were shocked and frightened at the sight of them. Ah, the arm! Kelsey was almost faint from fear and belatedly noticed the severed low-rank True God's arm still grasping her tightly. Don't move. Zen reached out his hand and lightly patted the arm, making it drop to the ground where he kicked it aside. With that taken care of, he stood up to observe the interior of the Divine Time Temple. That was when they all heard a scream from outside the Divine Time Temple. Help! Help me drive away the time ghosts! Through the translucent time ghosts, they saw Reginald, the top-rank True God, rushing forward with a group of time ghosts on his heels. There were so many time ghosts gathering at the door of the Divine Time Temple and he'd have no chance to get in. Reginald took the risk and attracted the time ghosts to another direction for everyone's safety just now. They couldn't just stand by and let him be dragged away. But who was willing to go out to help him? Chapter 1906, Saving Reginald. These elites all came from rich clans and were particularly proud of their good conscience. They would never neglect to pay a debt of gratitude. However, they were currently caught in an extremely precarious situation. Rushing out now would mean immediate death and their conscience wasn't enough for them to risk their lives. Jolyon, do you have any more puppets? A True God asked. Jolyon had successfully lured a batch of time ghosts away with his puppets earlier. Unfortunately, that led to all of them getting cut into pieces. Yes, but I don't think they'll be really useful, Jolyon said. He did have several powerful puppets, even a special one that was even stronger than himself. These time ghosts are blocking the door. Puppets will be useless against them, Pascal pointed out. Jolyon nodded in agreement. Sending out the puppets would only result in them getting surrounded by the time ghosts. They would only end up getting cut up and destroyed. Help! Reginald was still in the air with a bunch of time ghosts hot at his tail. His life was currently on the line as he would be dead meat the moment his pursuer caught up with him. The sight of Reginald literally running for his life gave the other True Gods bad anxiety. Even Woodruff, who was outside the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, frowned deeply when he saw this scene. The War God Hall did not have many True Gods, but each one of them was extremely talented and powerful. Reginald was one of Woodruff's own disciples and the master was certain his student could become a consummate True God in the future. He wouldn't want to see that go to waste if Reginald ended up dying here in the Time Sea. It was at this time that Zen walked towards the door of the Divine Time Temple. As he approached, the time ghosts grew restless. LaQuisha gritted her teeth in concern. She wanted to stop him but ended up not saying anything. Thad, don't get too close to them, Kelsey warned. Zen was only 2 or 3 inches away from the time ghosts. These time ghosts' attacks are simple. All they do is channel the power of the time cracks, surround their targets, and cut them into pieces, he muttered. The problem is that no one can resist the cutting power of the time cracks, Pascal pointed out. The young man smiled. There's no need to block the cutting power. There are things that can't be cut into pieces. All of the True Gods present stared at Zen in confusion. Even Nellie couldn't help but speak. What kind of thing can't be cut into pieces? Water, or any sort of liquid, Zen said simply. He tapped his space ring and a golden light appeared in front of him, the Golden Beast statue. Surprise was written all over everyone's faces when they saw the Golden Beast statue in front of them. This was one of the highest prizes the Han clan offered for the Arena of Legends. LaQuisha herself wanted to win this statue. It was originally placed in the Holy Emperor City but disappeared so suddenly. Nobody expected it would be in Zen's possession. Those who knew of the statue immediately understood what Zen meant. Jolyon's puppets were powerful and complicated but they would all be completely destroyed by the time ghosts. The Golden Beast statue was different. It was essentially a mass of mobile liquid that could transform into various shapes much like the heavenly body. LaQuisha and a few other members of the Han clan knew about this but there were some other True Gods who were still puzzled at what Zen intended to do. Previously, Zen used this Golden Beast statue as a temporary body for Master Evil. After taking out the statue, Zen asked Master Evil to leave for a moment and he obliged, quietly returning to the young man's mind. Now fully under his control, the Golden Beast statue suddenly pounced. It was immediately seized by one of the time ghosts. Zen lost the connection with the Golden Beast statue and could only watch it get cut open by the power of the time cracks. A horrible, metal screech was heard as the statue was cut into pieces by the time ghost. Pieces of gold eventually fell from the sky and made tiny, tinkling sounds as they hit the ground. A look of disappointment appeared on everyone's faces. What was Zen thinking bringing out such a thing? Humph, this thing is just rubbish. What's the use of it? Langston mocked, not noticing the look of disdain LaQuisha shot him. A short while later, however, the gold pieces seemed to soften and liquefy, merging together and once again reforming into the golden beast statue. As soon as it was whole again, it immediately pounced and ran outside. It was too close. The golden beast statue had only crossed the distance of around 10 feet and could hardly increase its speed when the time ghosts at the door rushed over. In the blink of an eye, it was caught by a time ghost and then was chopped into pieces all over again. This time, however, the true gods' hearts were all ablaze with hope. They finally understood what the statue was for. Although the golden beast statue was very rare, there were many magic weapons of similar kind. It was perfect to use it in such an occasion. As soon as it cut the golden beast statue in pieces, the time ghost returned to its post at the door of the divine time temple. Meanwhile, the statue quietly recombined together. There was a bit of distance between where the statue reformed and where the time ghost stood guard. This distance gave the golden beast statue the chance to fully pounce and run at full speed. Whoosh! As it ran, the golden beast statue turned into a beam of light and flew, attracting the attention of the time ghosts. Buzz! There was a piercing humming sound as the time ghosts, who were previously devoted at guarding the door, all flew out to chase after the golden beast statue. Now, hurry! Zen shouted with urgency towards Reginald, who was up in the sky. Reginald was almost at his limit. He persisted almost on willpower alone and had little to no energy to even notice what was happening around him. Even when the time ghosts left, he remained in a state of numbness and distress. Somehow, Zen's voice pierced through the haze in Reginald's mind. It was like a battle cry that immediately lifted his spirit and he found himself suddenly rushing into the divine time temple. Whoosh! Reginald did not cross the last section of the path to the divine time temple by flying. Instead, he smashed directly into the temple. As he rushed through the gate, Zen quickly reached out and caught him, letting him spin in his hands to slow down before fully letting go. At that moment, the golden beast statue had once again been cut into pieces and the time ghosts were all on their way back to their posts. With a heavy gasp, Reginald felt his legs wobble and he quickly sat down. "Thank you," he said in a breathless voice. Warriors of the War God Hall always had a fiery temper but good morals. Having escaped death, Reginald couldn't thank Zen enough. He was truly grateful from the bottom of his heart. "You're welcome, I just did what I had to do. Besides, you got yourself in such a dangerous situation because you wanted to save everyone," Zen replied. Reginald could have definitely run away by relying on his own strength, but he chose to lure the time ghosts instead. Not everyone had the courage to do such a thing. Zen then looked at the golden beast statue in the distance. He didn't know if the divine time temple had any other points of exit or entry. If it only had this one door, then he would still need to use the golden beast statue when they left later. Woodruff witnessed all this outside the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. Good, good, good. Which clan is that boy from? He looks very promising. If he ever finds himself in our War God Hall in the future, I shall definitely reward him. This little guy sure does have some abilities, but there's also some luck at play here. I was afraid Reginald was about to die at some point, another holy being said. Was it through skill or merely sheer luck that this boy managed to successfully save Reginald? A faint smile made its way on Joy's face. Worry lingered in her heart despite Zen's heroic bravery. The more people paid attention to him, the more trouble he could potentially be in. She only hoped for the young man's safety and that he would safely leave the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. Once the astronomical transit day ended, she also hoped for his uneventful departure from the Han clan's floating island. Chapter 1907, Secret Time Room. It was as if the cloudy sky had cleared when everyone became in the mood to study the Divine Time Temple after Reginald was safely brought inside it. True to its name, the Divine Time Temple was an incredibly magnificent structure. A strange statue stood in the center of the broad hall. Its monstrous and thorny body looked like a huge bug, but it had a round mouth and rows of sharp teeth with spikes. It looked absolutely ferocious. "What kind of monster is this?" Zen asked curiously. He couldn't think of a reason such a strange and ugly statue stood in the otherwise majestic Divine Time Temple. Generally speaking, everything in the forbidden area was created by the faith energy, the Divine Time Temple included. Thus, the monster in front of them must be something that existed in legends. On the other hand, disgust washed over Elena's face as she stared at the strange statue. She shook her head. Although she knew something about the sun-blind race, this was the first time she had entered the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. Naturally, she was quite unfamiliar with the forbidden area they were in. A smile spread on Reginald's face when he heard Zen's query. "This is the time source bug. It's said that the passage of time in our world is the way it is now because these bugs devoured the past," he said with a smile. If these bugs devoured the past, does it mean the past doesn't exist anymore? Zen asked again. According to what Elena had explained, only the leader of the sun-blind race was qualified to go back to the past in this world, which meant that the past did exist. Furthermore, their leader could change the past to a certain extent. For instance, she could kill creatures in the past and it would affect the present. Yet, what Zen had learned and Elena's explanation contradicted each other. In fact, he was confused at the beginning when Elena told him about that ability of the leader of the sun-blind race. In theory, all clues about a holy being's past would disappear once the leader of the sun-blind race returned to the past and killed him. Then, everything related to him would change. For example, his children would disappear, and his partner would not have met him, nor would he even establish the floating island, all of which would produce a series of far-reaching shadows in the future. Yet according to Elena's statements, only the holy being disappeared after he was killed. Everything else that he had left still remained, which in theory was not right. Anything related to time was too hard to understand, and even Elena couldn't explain it. She just told Zen what she knew. The time source bugs devouring the past is just a legend. The real time source bugs wouldn't devour all of the past. In fact, they live in time and they themselves are the guardians of time. The time source bugs are quite powerful, and even the holy beings can't escape from them, Reginald said flatly. Holy beings will encounter these time source bugs? Zen asked. He was even more confused now. He turned to Elena and asked again, didn't you say that the leader of sun-blind race could go back to the past only because she had obtained the time sword of gods? Since the time source bugs survive within time, how would the holy beings encounter them? Elena simply shrugged and could not answer his question. Although she had read books about the time sea forbidden land, she did not know all of its secrets. Reginald, however, shook his head and said, time cracks are everywhere in the time sea. Holy beings have the ability to find relatively large cracks in it. They can use those time cracks to go back to the past. It was known that every wave in the time sea was peppered with infinite time cracks, but those time cracks were quite thin and impossible to cross. Yet in such a vast time sea, there would occasionally be a relatively large and complete time crack. Some of those time cracks were even over 100 feet wide. Although those huge time cracks usually disappeared within seconds, it was still possible to go through them. I think you must have mistaken the cause and effect, said Reginald. The leader of sun-blind race is able to return to the past unscathed because she has the sword. Even if the other holy beings enter the time cracks, they still wouldn't be able to go to the past because they cannot pass through the time guardians block. I see, Zen nodded. Although he still had some doubts and questions, he had sorted out some of them. It turned out that there was a race within time, and the matters that were involved in it were truly much more complicated than he had imagined. Go ahead. This divine time temple is something you can't miss. I've been here once and I learned so much, Reginald beamed. Many true gods had already bypassed the huge statue of the time source bug and entered the passageway in the middle of the hall. Pitch-black arched doors flanked both sides of the corridor. The true gods quickly entered the gates one after another without hesitation. At the same time, different rays of light glowed from within the doors. I know that those are the secret time rooms. It is said that anyone who enters one of them can break their bottleneck, Elena quipped. Is it that amazing? Zen mumbled with raised brows. Meanwhile, Reginald leaned on to one side. It is indeed that amazing. A secret time room can show you any history of the divine land, and what happened during that specific period of time is what you need. Why don't you go in one of them and try? The secret time room has only one effect on everyone, so I don't need to enter it again, he stated. Reginald was only a mid-rank true god when he had first entered the Divine Time Temple, and he had encountered the biggest challenge in his life. He had never been able to completely comprehend the invincible fighting intent of the fighting godly way. What actually happened when he entered the secret time room was he had returned to the ancient battlefield and met the first ancient warrior who cultivated the fighting godly way, and saw the warrior launch the invincible fighting intent with his own eyes. After that, he left the Divine Time Temple and went back to the War God Hall. 7 days later, he had completely mastered the invincible fighting intent, broken through the shackles of his cultivation, and become a top-ranked true god. Zen was even more surprised than he already had been when he heard that story. If it was true that the secret time room would put one in a place where they needed to cultivate and gain more knowledge, then a deep sigh escaped his lips. Such a miraculous place was beyond his comprehension once again. He couldn't guess how the place managed to do that. When he saw more and more true gods enter those arched doors, he finally chose a door and walked in. Where would this secret time room take me? He wondered. Once the others had entered their chosen doors, they seemed to quickly sink into a period of time. Zen, however, did not have any reaction whatsoever for quite a while. He was still in complete darkness. After what seemed to be eons, he noticed that a wisp of dark brown aura slowly filled the dark space. The chaotic energy, he guessed. He was still in a confused daze and his face turned into a strange color. What was the meaning of that slowly rotating chaotic energy? Was it a piece of history of the Divine Land? Chapter 1908, An Epiphany. Zen continued to stare at the mass of chaotic energy that was spinning slowly for a long time. As the energy continuously spun, the secret time room's light, that was earlier flickering faintly, slowly became brighter. But apart from that, everything else around was still gray. Is this really the beginning of the Divine Land? Zen was also very curious about the origin of the Divine Land. He had limited understanding about its source. To be honest, there were many true gods, who did not even give a slight thought on the origin of the Divine Land. Maybe because they rarely paid attention to things outside of the Divine Land. However, after Zen created a mini Divine Land that was extremely similar to the actual Divine Land, his mind was full of questions. He kept wondering whether the Divine Land had been created by some powerful master or even by an extraordinary creature, earlier mentioned by Holy J. Under Zen's non-stop gaze, the chaotic energy became denser and was spinning even faster. At the same time, the chaotic energy was condensing towards the center to form a core. Just then, an indistinct shape of axe appeared. Axe. Zen's eyes narrowed. It was said that the creating axe was used to hack through the Divine Land. But this so-called myth had appeared at the opening of the Divine Land, and the creating axe had been disseminated into pieces a few days after the Divine Land had been cut open. That was why there were numerous doubts about the existence of the creating axe. Who? A hand appeared from the darkness. The white hand looked delicate and smooth. And it was devoid of any wrinkles, right from the palm to the fingertips. Suddenly, the hand grabbed the creating axe and started cutting towards the core, rapidly. Boom! With a loud bang, a blazing light shot out. The light was so bright that Zen was unable to open his eyes. His ears were buzzing, and his heart was thumping quickly. In the secret time room, what he saw was only the past, but it still shook him to see the sight. He could only imagine how terrifying it would have been, when the creating axe split the core. When the light dimmed, Zen looked over again, only to find that the core was not cut in half. Instead, there was only a small crack on the surface of it. He couldn't believe that the axe hadn't even split the core into two parts. The delicate hand once again heaved the creating axe and smashed the core with more intensity. Boom, boom. It was not until the creating axe smashed for the third time that a muffled crack sound was heard. The core finally cracked and split. Suddenly there was flashing of lightning and clapping of the thunder. All the raindrops which were earlier formed from the chaotic energy, went rampant across the world, turning it into an extremely broad world. Looking at this vast world, Zen was sure that this was the creation of the Divine Land. But what use was this picture in the secret time room? When others entered the secret time room, they would see a history that could either make them have an epiphany about the constraint on the cultivation method, or the bottleneck in the cultivation base. A certain period of history would always give the epiphany to the true gods who entered the time secret room. However, the scene in front of Zen's eyes did not cause an epiphany on him. He did not undergo any kind of emotional turmoil. After the world unfolded, everything developed in front of Zen at a rapid speed. The heavy rain continued to pour down for a long time and eventually the sea was formed. Then continents and mountains appeared on top of the sea. Within the mountains, green hues transformed into a forest. However, the evolution was not much different from that of Zen's inner world. When the world reached a certain extent, everything stopped evolving. At the same time, the chaotic sea started to boil. When the boiling reached its peak, all the chaotic seawater rose up and turned into huge clouds. Soon, a bright and golden sun appeared and quickly rose high. The appearance of the clouds gave a familiar feeling to Zen. The clouds were similar to the internal momentum clouds which formed after he had devoured the mud, but the scene in his inner world was not so spectacular. These are not the internal momentum clouds. Zen exclaimed. They are the boundary clouds. But how could they be boundary clouds? Zen narrowed his eyes as he tried to gauge them. The cloud spreading in front of his eyes was very similar to the boundary cloud that had been formed when he had become a world lord. So he was even more confused when he saw the similar scene. When Zen became the world lord in the divine refinement forbidden land, Holy J had told him that the boundary cloud he had condensed contained the aura of the godly way guide. At that time, Zen didn't understand what he was talking about. And he had no clue about the godly way guide. However, He had engraved the situation as well as the aura of the boundary cloud, firmly in his mind. Hence he had a familiar experience when he saw the clouds forming in front of him. Just as he stood there, puzzling over the clouds, a huge tower shadow suddenly reflected from the clouds. At the top of the tower shadow, there loomed a figure along with a dragon shadow. Howl! As the figure pulled out a sword, the dragon shadow got infused into the sword. The figure brandished the long sword into the clouds, and it shot out dazzling light in all the directions of the divine land. The beginning swordsmanship. Zen raised his eyebrows slightly. When Zen and Rocher fought in the illusion battlefield, Rocher's beginning swordsmanship had left a deep impression on him. By then, Zen had already comprehended the essence of it. But the beginning swordsmanship was only a pure swordsmanship and it didn't really match with God's intimidating strike. It was because the emotion-closing godly way pursued the most formidable power, and only one strike could defeat the opponent. But the figure's beginning swordsmanship was different from that of Rocher's. In other words, the beginning swordsmanship played only a small part of the swordsmanship that the figure employed. There was tremendous power every time the figure struck the sword. The aura contained in the power was that from the clouds. Whoosh! A lone ray of sword light flew out, traveling over thousands of miles and arriving at the edge of the divine land. The edge of the divine land was easily cut open as if it was mere cloth. The world began to expand. 1 sword strike, 100 sword strikes. 10,000 sword strikes, 100,000 sword strikes. As the sword continued to strike, the divine land continued to expand endlessly. Zen watched the whole scene transform from beginning to end. Splash! Soon after, the rain poured down from the boundary clouds. This time, the raindrops were not brown, but pure and crystal clear. There was no true chaotic energy in the divine land after all, and this was different from Zen's inner world. The creatures in Zen's inner world were not afraid of the chaotic energy. In fact, the chaotic sea had never experienced such a process of transformation. As the figure slowly dissipated, Zen closed his eyes, remembering every detail of the figure's swordsmanship. The figure had slashed out 100,000 sword strikes. But there were only 13 sword moves in total. Every move of the 13 is so effortlessly powerful. No one in the divine land would be able to display such amazing moves. The aura contained in the sword moves is very complicated, but I can somehow comprehend it. It is actually a mix of the hundreds of godly ways' internal momentum. The so-called godly way guide is the combination of 3,000 godly ways. It turns out that my father gave me the infinity ruler, only because it can help me absorb 3,000 godly ways. It is the most convenient and simplest method. But even so, it's very difficult to collect all of the 3,000 godly ways. Zen thought. After figuring out the use of the infinity ruler, Zen had more or less understood the working of it. However, he wasn't sure what would happen after the infinity ruler sucked in all of the godly ways. But after he saw the scene in the secret time room, he understood the whole meaning of it. Chapter 1909, Fusing Internal Momentum. Once the figure in the clouds slashed 100,000 times, everything in the secret time room disappeared right before Zen's eyes. The secret time room returned to darkness, as if nothing had ever happened. Zen wasn't in much of a hurry to leave the secret time room. He continued standing quietly and without moving in the darkness. It was difficult for Zen to completely absorb the 3,000 godly ways with the infinity ruler in such a short period of time. Even if the figure slashed 100,000 times, Zen still couldn't exactly comprehend the strikes, because he didn't understand the many of the different kinds of internal momentum contained in them. That said, the secret time room hadn't taught Zen any theurgies, instead, it only offered him a new way of thinking. The method is to fuse the godly ways. Zen thought to himself. Indeed, there really were people who could fuse 2 or even 3 kinds of godly ways together. However, this was only a technique put in place in order to make good use of each godly way's strength as well as to allow different godly ways to complement each other. Many godly ways clashed with each other though, and fusing hundreds of different kinds of godly ways was simply unheard of. The reason for the latter was because there was no second person throughout all in the divine land that possessed such an ability. It was safe to say that the secret time room was truly amazing. Can I fuse them? Zen wondered. As of right now, Zen had a total of 307 types of godly ways in his body. He figured there was no harm in giving it a try. As this thought came to mind, streams of chaotic energy were continuously being drawn out from the chaotic sea. They flowed along the faint light and began to gather on the scales of the godly tile. The internal momentum coming from all sorts of godly ways began to slowly seep and spread out. Elementary fire godly way, tortoise godly way, purple aura godly way, snow godly way, Murdering godly way. Parting water godly way. Each scale only absorbed a small amount of the chaotic energy. Thus, in turn, the quantity of internal momentum produced wasn't very much, either. The internal momentum coming from more than 300 godly ways varied. As the different kinds of internal momentum slowly entangled with each other, the colors began to oscillate on a continual basis, almost like dancing light. In the end, it turned into black-brown, a color similar to that of chaos energy. What a surprise! It went well. I don't know if it'll really work or not. Zen muttered to himself. The process of fusing the internal momentum had gone very smoothly, which was beyond any of Zen's expectation. After fusing the internal momentum of all godly ways, Zen quietly extracted it. As soon as he began extracting the fused internal momentum, Zen immediately noticed that some of the energy was surging out widely. The energy was so violent that the moment it escaped his cinnabar field, it resembled a wild, running horse rampaging within his body. Phew, 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 a series of muffled sounds could be heard coming from Zen's body. All of a sudden, a sweet and fishy taste quickly filled Zen's throat and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body weakened unexpectedly and he actually fell to the ground. Are you all right? Master Evil asked, with concern. He had no idea what Zen had just done. Moments ago, Master Evil had been hiding in Zen's mind. When he heard what Reginald had said, he roughly understood what this secret time room was. In the Divine Land existed a stone known as the Epiphany Stone, which could help cultivators enter the best state and obtain the most suitable inspiration for breaking through to higher levels. It was said that someone had comprehended a wonderful theurgy through the Epiphany Stone because the cultivator had seen a few illusions within it. That said though, the Epiphany Stone was incomparable to the secret time room. When looking at the two, it was clear that the secret time room was much more advanced. In fact, it could directly create the most suitable period of time for any cultivator. Master Evil had previously guessed what kind of scene Zen would experience. What he had never expected was that Zen would observe how the Divine Land came into existence. He knew Zen's origin and he knew he was an extraordinary warrior. In spite of that, he still wondered what kind of cultivation method this guy had practiced that required him to comprehend the Divine Land's origins. Master Evil could clearly see that Zen had indeed comprehended something, and he was looking forward to his achievements. Of course, he didn't expect that Zen would suffer from internal injury not long after it showed signs that he had made some progress. Don't worry, I'm fine, only my internal organs are shattered. Zen took out a snow-white pill and swallowed it at once. He had retrieved this pill from the pill refining room in case of future need. After consuming it, a cool sensation spread throughout his entire body, and his internal organs began recovering rapidly. As he gritted his teeth, he slowly got himself up from the ground. The method provided by the time-secret room could possibly work. He hadn't considered how violent the fused internal momentum would be. Before even drawing it out, he had already lost control. The godly ways fused by the figure were selective. Perhaps he has avoided a few godly ways that clash with each other. I didn't filter out the clashing godly ways, and fused all of them. The repellent power of internal momentum is too strong, so the fused internal momentum is too violent and difficult to control. Zen thought. After failing the first time, Zen didn't give up or feel discouraged. Instead, he started the second experiment, and the third. Many of the true gods had gained some insights in the secret time room. And every time, once they came out, their faces revealed a trace of excitement that they couldn't control. With a look of arrogance on his face, Langston stood at the door of the secret time room and waited. A short while later, Laquisha came out of the secret time room with a shocking expression on her face, as if she had witnessed an incredible scene while she was inside. Laquisha, how are you doing? Are you okay? Langston asked. Fine, replied Laquisha indifferently. That's good to hear. Langston smiled back and said, I've also gained a lot from this place. I feel as though I can break through to become a top-rank true god at any time now. Oh, good for you, Laquisha nodded, as she looked inadvertently at the secret time room where Zen was staying. As Langston took notice of Laquisha's reaction, his face darkened and turned grim. This whole time, Laquisha had secretly kept an eye on Zen. In fact, Langston had noticed this before, but he simply restrained his anger. After all, he was a proud man, how could he even bear this? As Laquisha repeatedly paid attention to Zen, the killing intent in Langston's heart began to grow larger and larger. At that very moment, Zen walked out of the secret time room. Although the wounds within his body had almost healed, his face was still slightly pale. Thad, Elena shouted. You seem to be hurt. Kelsey said. As Zen stepped out, the two girls immediately rushed toward him. "Don't worry, it doesn't matter. Something wrong happened during my cultivation," Zen said with a smile. "How is that even possible? Doesn't the secret time room only provide cultivators with certain insights?" Kelsey asked, curiously. As Laquisha heard what her two sisters were saying, her eyes filled with worry, but her emotion disappeared quickly. On the other hand though, it didn't escape Langston's eyes. He sneered, he just overestimated himself and falsely thought he had actually comprehended something. He'd certainly face a few problems if he rushed to practice. Sooner or later, he will spiral into madness and die. Zen didn't say anything, but Elena couldn't stand it any longer. "What kind of nonsense are you even talking about? I'm just speaking the truth. Someone hurting themselves in the secret time room, now that's a real talent." "Ha ha," Langston said, with a wry smile. Zen shot a cold glance in Langston's direction, but didn't say a word. Instead, he walked toward the Divine Time Temple's door. Being ignored by Zen in front of Laquisha made Langston feel awful. If it weren't for the fact that this wasn't the place for a fight, he would have killed Zen off in the blink of an eye. The true gods inside the Time Divine Temple left the secret time rooms one after another, and gathered in front of the door once again. The time ghosts were still blocking the door, and Reginald, Jolyon and a few other true gods were discussing where to go next. "If we find a way to lure these time ghosts away, then we'll have a chance at entering the second stage of the Time Sea," a true god proposed. "This time though, the Time Sea is much more dangerous. The first stage is already so terrifying. Wouldn't it be courting death if we go to the second stage? I think it's probably better if we return the way we came, and leave the Time Sea Forbidden Land," another true god said. Many true god cherished their lives preciously, and thus, they wouldn't take such a risk. That said, a good portion of the true gods were still very persistent. One of the true gods said, "This Forbidden Land has become much more difficult than before. In the past, the Forbidden Land was very stable, but perhaps a few great opportunities have formed within it this time." In their opinion, the female leader of the Sun-Blind race was the controller of the Time Sea Forbidden Land. Seeing as she invited them to the Astronomical Transit Day celebration, it was impossible for her to casually adjust the difficulty in the Forbidden Land. Now that there were so many time ghosts in the Forbidden Land, there was a higher chance that great opportunities would present themselves. The group of true gods were discussing whether or not they were to explore further. For some time, they even quarreled over this. "Stop quarreling. Whether we leave the Divine Time Temple or not depends on that, anyway," said Reginald, as he turned his head to look at Zen. The time ghosts were still blocking the gate, and therefore, they could only rely on the golden beast statue to lure them away. Otherwise, no one could ever leave the Divine Time Temple. Upon hearing what Reginald had to say, everyone immediately fixed their gaze on Zen. Chapter 1910, Abduction. Only the golden beast statue that was thrown outside had the ability to lure away these time ghosts. When Zen distracted the time ghosts using the golden beast statue a while later, everyone had to follow him. He was the one who had the right to decide whether to go deeper into the Time Sea Forbidden Land or to leave that place entirely. "I will continue to go deeper into the Forbidden Land," Zen said without hesitation. Reginald, Jolyon and others gave a nod of approval. About half of the true gods didn't want to explore the Forbidden Land while the other half wanted to continue the exploration with Zen. "And who do you think you are? What makes you think that you can make decisions for us?" a top-ranked true god sneered. "He is just a low-ranked true god," Langston muttered as he made his way towards the rest. "We want to go back. Chart out a way for us so that we can return," a mid-ranked true god stated boldly. The golden beast statue had no importance in the eyes of these true gods. They thought that since they wanted to return, Zen was obliged to help them navigate their way back. The holy beings outside the Time Sea wore different expressions on their faces. According to the female leader of the Sun-Blind race, there was a supreme treasure of belief in the Time Sea Forbidden Land. So these holy beings hoped that these true gods would explore the Forbidden Land. Some consummate true gods had already entered the place, but since the true gods present were in a larger number, the holy beings pinned their hopes on the true gods as well. Zen casually looked at the angry true gods and softly said, "It seems as if we are no longer on the same page. Therefore, people who are willing to go further can step forward." As soon as he finished speaking, Jolyon, Reginald, Pascal and many other true gods stood behind him. And the rest including Langston stayed where they were. "I'll go with that as well." Without hesitation, Elena joined Zen's team as well. "I'm following Thad." Kelsey walked up to Zen. "I want to further explore the Forbidden Land," Laquisha said after pondering for a while. Laquisha, if you go further, you'll most likely die. Don't follow him, Langston pleaded. I'm not following him, I'm just making a decision of my own, Laquisha said indifferently. Langston didn't know how to convince Laquisha to stay. He gave Zen a hard look and said, listen, if you want to die, then go ahead, but don't lead others to their death as well. Let us back to the Forbidden Land's entrance, and I'll reward you with some divine might coins if I'm in a good mood. Or else you'll regret that you didn't listen to me. That's right, you'll face our wrath if you disobey us, another mid-rank true god said coldly. Zen waved his hand and gestured them to leave. Since you don't want to go with me, feel free to leave. At the gate of the Divine Time Temple, the Time Ghost stood still but carefully guarded the door. You, Langston said, visibly aggravated. Why are you wasting your breath with him? Let me catch him, and then he'll be at our disposal. A mid-rank true god suddenly leapt out from behind Langston, stretching out his hands to grab for Zen. It looked as if he wished to abduct Zen. There was a cracking sound. Lightning snakes the size of a thumb emerged from the mid-rank true god's hands and started wandering around. The mid-rank true god had reached a high level in the cultivation of the thunderstorm godly way. He underestimated Zen, considering that he was just a low-rank true god. When Reginald and the rest of the group watched the events unfold, they were left in utter shock. They didn't want Zen to be abducted by Langston and the mean mid-rank true god, but there was nothing they could do now. The mid-rank true god's hands suddenly turned into sharp claws and went for Zen's face. Zen's eyes flashed with a sharp luster. He gave a cold snort and firmly grasped the mid-rank true god's right hand. A powerful force erupted when Zen's hand made contact with the opponent's hand, and the lightning snakes on the arms of the mid-rank true god went towards Zen. Suddenly, lightning snakes emerged from Zen's hands as well. They also originated from the thunderstorm godly way. The lightning snakes released by the two men crushed each other to nullify their effects. Meanwhile, Zen dragged the mid-rank true god slowly. He threw the mid-rank true god with a suplex as his right foot landed on the ground with a loud thud. Due to Zen's force, the mid-rank true god darted towards the gate of Divine Time Temple like a kite with a broken string. He smashed into the wall beside the door and fell on the ground. The true gods were dumbfounded by the scenes they were witnessing. They were well aware that Zen intentionally smashed the mid-rank true god on the wall. Had he had tossed him outside the gate of the Divine Time Temple, that man would have been devoured by the time ghosts. Pascal and Langston gasped with astonishment. Zen had killed Sheridan as a proving godly warrior. He even injured Langston once. Zen had improved his strength vastly in a short period of time, ever since he became a true god. The mid-rank true god was not weak and was ranked 17th in the arena of legends. But he was not strong enough to fight Thad. Thus, Thad's strength shocked the spectators. Pascal made a note to himself. He wasn't sure that he'd quite win against Thad if they ever fought. Nellie, who was analyzing the whole situation quietly, thought that Zen was so strong that no one would be able to defeat him. More often than not, a warrior with strength like his had practiced might godly way. Thus, she judged he must be the anonymous man just as her sister had assumed. With a sudden whoosh, Reginald and Jolyon stood in front of Zen, one on the right and the other on the left. Meanwhile, Zen declared, "Fight me only if you wish to die. I won't be held accountable for my actions." Zen didn't want to reveal too many of his moves as there were quite a lot of holy beings watching him from the outside of the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. He knew enough to defend himself, without revealing much. Thad has made clear his intentions of going deep into the Forbidden Land. You are welcome to follow him if you wish. But if anyone goes against him, they will be facing me in the War God Hall. Reginald announced, his eyes blazing with a strong intent to fight. People from the War God Hall were born to fight. The true gods of the War God Hall were far more powerful than other true gods at the same level. Reginald's words proved enough to stop those true gods who intended to return to the entrance from holding Zen as a hostage. As for Langston, his eyes were filled with fear. Zen could sense that everyone was watching him as he made his way towards the door of the Divine Time Temple. In the distance, a pile of golden fragments with even thickness were lying there. As Zen thought, the golden pieces merged slowly and finally turned into the golden beast statue. Follow me. Just to be clear, it's not my fault, should anything happen to you if you are too slow to keep up, Zen said indifferently. The golden beast statue was a bit far from the ghosts, so it didn't quite attract the time ghosts after it got resurrected from the ground. Under Zen's control, it started running wildly, forming a golden light that flew past the gate of the Divine Time Temple. The time ghosts reacted at once. As soon as they noticed the golden beast statue, they flew towards the statue, just like moths flew towards flames. Letting out shrill cries, the time ghosts turned around and went after the golden beast statue. Thus, the gate to the divine time temple was no more blocked. Let's go. Zen was the first person to rush out of the divine time temple, and the other true gods followed suit. Some of the true gods still weren't convinced and wanted to leave the time sea forbidden land. However, the way back was filled with the time ghosts trying to tear the statue apart. If they went that way, they'd be courting death. Thus, they had no choice but to follow Zen into the depths of the time sea forbidden land. Chapter 1911. Goddess Statue. The true gods quickly distanced themselves from the large group of time ghosts. They bypassed the divine time temple and continued advancing for dozens of miles before they began to slow their pace. Their vigilance was relentless, though. No one slacked in the least. Except for Zen, Elena, and a few of true gods, everyone else had entered the Forbidden Land a few times at least, and had a great deal of experience. The level of difficulty affiliated to exploring a Forbidden Land wasn't constant, but instead, changed and varied constantly. As soon as they entered this Forbidden Land, they encountered enormous trouble, which meant nothing else than the difficulty across all the Forbidden Land had been increased. The deeper they traveled into the Forbidden Land, the more dangerous it would become. It was even possible that they'd encounter an unsolvable crisis. However, the more difficult things became, the more abundant chances would be born. The risk was always in direct proportion with the possible profit. This easily explained why nearly half the true gods were all very willing to take such risks. As Zen advanced, he continued combining the internal momentum within his inner world. Inside the secret time room, he tried at least a dozen times. After mixing hundreds of kinds of internal momentum, he obtained a very powerful, never-before-seen energy. In spite of being its creator, he couldn't seem to control it or use it smoothly. Zen had relied on his omnipotent ability to firmly tie the internal momentum together in his inner world. And yet, he still barely had the capacity to control the internal momentum. If he were to completely lose control over it, he knew the energy would run wild, like a horse without reins, in his inner world. If his intention was to use such formidable power to resist the enemy, he risked being seriously injured by the latter before even having the chance to make a move. He figured the problem had to be related to the mixed internal momentum. The scene in the secret time room only showed him that the figure had mixed several hundred kinds of internal momentum and placed them within the sword. He was unable to figure out the names of the several hundred kinds of internal momentum, though. And other than that, it was also extremely dangerous for him to randomly combine a few hundred kinds of internal momentum. At the moment, all he could do was to keep trying within his inner world, constantly adjusting the different types of internal momentum and hoping to obtain the best possible results. We are getting close to the goddess statue at the front. We can get to the second stage if we cross the goddess statue. Be careful, it will be much harder this time, Reginald reminded. Huh, goddess statue, what's that? Zen asked curiously. You'll soon find out, Reginald replied with a cool smile. If you want to enter the second floor of the Time Sea Forbidden Land, you have no choice but to pass by it. Everyone heard Reginald speak and they all revealed an expression of worry. In addition to Zen, there were a few true gods born outside the floating islands, too. The elites of the rich clans on the floating islands had prepared themselves well before attending the astronomical transit day, and they knew the Time Sea Forbidden Land very well. Therefore, even Elena and Kelsey could provide Zen with a detailed answer. In the past, it hadn't been easy to get by the goddess statue in the Time Sea Forbidden Land's first stage. From time to time, a few true gods even died there. This time, the difficulty of passing through the Time Sea Forbidden Land had been greatly increased. Perhaps they would all be killed. Who has a star door? I'm not going there without a star door, shouted a true god. The other true gods also stopped walking abruptly. A true god also spoke, if we don't have a star door, we'll all definitely be killed. I'm not willing to take that risk. Why don't you inform me once you've passed the goddess statue? Noticing that Zen didn't understand the thing they were talking about, Elena explained in a low voice, the star door is a very rare treasure that was obtained from the Abyss Demon region. It costs about 80,000 divine might coins. What? That's so expensive, Zen exclaimed. Exactly, Elena nodded, but the star door is still very important. It often works really well, especially in the Forbidden Land. You'll understand soon enough. After Elena had explained the situation, all of the true gods present had fallen silent. The star door was so expensive that the people who owned one often didn't want to put it into use so easily. They all wanted others to offer their star doors instead. After a long while, Reginald shook his head. Well, I'm very lucky to have survived the danger this time. I will use the star door this time. As soon as he finished speaking, a black scroll appeared in his hand. The scroll itself was densely packed with golden Sanskrit words. Reginald shook the black scroll in his hand slightly, and the golden Sanskrit words on the scroll began to flicker in the light. At the same time, a faint blue light ring appeared in front of him. The light ring began to spin, spreading out layers of blue light along with it. In the middle, contrastingly, it emitted a dark blue light which looked almost like a piece of high gem floating in midair. Is this the star door? What a beautiful sight, Zen exclaimed. At the same time, he also noticed that a strong internal momentum was being emitted from the star door. The internal momentum belonged to the space godly way. Zen's heart skipped a beat when he felt the star door's intense internal momentum. It was absolutely astonishing. Although he didn't fully understand the internal momentum, he could comprehend, after activating the infinity ruler. That said, for the time being, Zen had no idea exactly what the star door was even for. More importantly, once he used the Thurgy, he would probably expose his true identity. After all, he had fought with many true gods present by taking advantage of the infinity ruler's ability. I'll have to do it later, Zen muttered as he managed to restrain his impulse. After activating a star door from the scroll in his hand, Reginald asked, I've already contributed one star door. Who is willing to offer another one? A moment's silence followed before Pascal said, I can provide one, too. Pascal was the most talented mid-rank true god in the Han clan's younger generation, and the Han clan had given him plenty ravishing treasures. He equally took out a scroll that was exactly the same as Reginald's. I'll unfold the star door when I arrive at the goddess statue. Reginald nodded and then asked, now that we have enough star doors, are you all willing to go together? When the other true gods saw the star door, they were slightly relieved and followed Reginald as he began to move forward. Part of the group, Zen still felt puzzled. Elena, you haven't told me the use of the star door yet. Elena smiled slightly and responded, it's like a transmission channel, but it's a special one. When people enter the star door, they will be transported to the next nearest star door. Are you saying that a temporary transmission array can be built in this type of situation? Zen asked, bewildered. Yes, but the star door has a special characteristic that allows to transfer people to the nearest star door, and thus, the process requires 2 star doors. My brother will also use another star door later, so that a temporary transmission channel will be formed between the two, Elena explained. After hearing Elena's explanation, Zen was still uncertain. He wondered why they needed the star doors when passing through the goddess statue. Despite his confusion, he didn't ask any more questions. He silently moved forward along with the group. As he crossed a small mountain pass, he noticed a huge canyon and at its center, he discovered a statue that was more than 100 feet high. The moment Zen saw the statue clearly, he was shocked and his body began to tremble. Could this be the goddess statue? He asked in a muffled voice. Yes, it is. What's wrong? Elena asked. A strange look came over her face as she noticed Zen's expression. Kelsey, who was silent, also looked at Zen's face. The goddess statue was carved from a huge gem, and was completely transparent. The carved goddess was seated on a huge tree stump, looking up at the sky. Her expression, her clothes, and even her detailed strands of hair were incomparably exquisite. Zen felt as though he had seen this face before. It looked almost the same as Yan's, but with a totally different temperament and aura. After killing the mud creature beneath the Tai clan's ground, Zen had obtained a peculiar bead from it. He had seen this face before, but at the time, he could only see a young girl's head soaked in a big pot. Now, what he saw was her whole body. This goddess statue was the same one as he had seen back then. Now, Zen was sure of that. Chapter 1912. Protect the goddess statue. Zen stared at the goddess statue for a long time before finally opening his mouth and asking, who is this goddess? Clueless, Elena and Kelsey shook their heads in response. This was the first time that they had entered the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, too. Although they had done some research beforehand and known that the goddess statue was here, they didn't know much about it. People have 2 conjectures about the identity of this woman, Reginald said. 1. She might be the leader of the sun-blind race. The leader of the sun-blind race. Zen raised his eyebrows slightly. The leader of the sun-blind race never revealed her true face to others. In the past countless divine eras, no one had seen her true face, not even the holy beings. As the one who had control over the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, it was indeed possible for the leader of the sun-blind race to put a statue of herself here. However, it was difficult to think of a reason why she would do that. The second guess is that she is the leader of the Time Guardians, Reginald continued. However, this is just a wild theory. No one knows exactly what kind of race the Time Guardian is. All we know is that there is a race guarding time, but the existence of this race hasn't been verified. So that's how it is, Zen said in a low voice. Reginald knew more about the Time-Sea Forbidden Land than almost any of the true gods, so if he wasn't able to give a definite answer, it was safe to say that it would be hard to confirm the identity of the goddess statue. After answering Zen, Reginald went to set up the star doors with Pascal. Noticing the disappointment on Zen's face, Elena blinked her eyes and asked, "You think this goddess looks familiar, don't you?" Zen gave her a strange look. "How do you know that?" "By the expression on your face. You seem to have met this woman before. Or does she look like your family?" Elena smiled. Zen was a bit taken aback by how easily Elena had read him, but then he nodded reluctantly. "I don't know who this goddess is, but look carefully at her face. Don't you think she looks a bit like you?" Elena asked gently. Zen took another look at the face of the goddess statue and realized that Elena was right. The goddess did look like him. Of course, considering that she looked almost exactly like Yan, it wasn't strange at all. After all, there was some resemblance between him and Yan since they were siblings. But Elena's words sowed another doubt in Zen's mind. It couldn't be a coincidence that the goddess statue looked so much like Yan. Was it possible that this goddess was their mother? Although he was looking only at a statue, Zen was sure that he had seen this woman before. Had his mother only a head left? It was hard for Zen to accept this conjecture. Looking at the complex expression on Zen's face, Elena smiled. She knew that his background was complicated and that the statue had some sort of meaning to him, so she said a few words of comfort. "Don't think too much. There are many things in this world that are not within your control. Perhaps the truth is not what you think." "You are right," Zen nodded. It was no use thinking too much. Sooner or later, he would find out the truth. Accepting this fact, he looked at the bottom of the goddess statue. Under the goddess statue, Pascal activated a scroll and spread out another star door. After the blue star door appeared, Pascal went straight into it and disappeared in an instant. A short while later, he shot toward them from a nearby hill and waved. A temporary transmission array was set up after the two star doors were connected. When Pascal returned, Reginald suddenly raised his voice and said, "Now that the two star doors have been built successfully, we have a way out. This time, it might be more difficult for us to protect the goddess statue, but the rewards we will earn will be more than ever, so I hope that you all will do your best." After that, Reginald took the lead in walking to the goddess statue. He reached out his palm and patted the bottom of the statue, leaving a complete palm print on it. Following that, the other top-ranked true gods walked over and left faint palm prints on the base of the goddess statue one after the other. Soon, it was the turn of the mid-ranked true gods and low-ranked true gods. The last ones were Zen, Laquisha, Elena, and a few others. Just as Zen reached out his hand and patted the statue, the eyes under the mask of the leader of the sun-blind race flickered, revealing a trace of concern in her eyes. Clap. Then, Zen gently slapped his palm on the bottom of the goddess statue, leaving a faint palm print just like the others. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. The leader of the sun-blind race gazed at him for a long time, and a trace of doubt appeared in her eyes before quickly being replaced by disappointment and regret. However, the other holy beings didn't notice the change in her expression as their eyes were focused on the consummate true gods. The group of consummate true gods, including Rochelle, were madly fleeing from a huge monster that they had angered in the third stage of the Time-Sea Forbidden Land. Beneath the goddess statue, all the palm prints of the true gods were imprinted. The tall goddess statue suddenly emitted a faint green light that slowly rose from the bottom and filled the entire statue like a green liquid. Everyone, be careful. Even if it's not your first time entering the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, I have to remind you that this is the only way through which we can enter the second stage. Later, there will be a massive amount of beasts attacking the goddess statue, and we'll have to do everything we can to protect it. If the statue is completely destroyed, we will lose the chance to enter the second stage. If you find yourself too exhausted to fight, you can pass through the star door and rest outside for a while. But please return to participate in the battle soon as we'll need all the hands we can get. While Reginald was speaking to everyone in a calm voice, the valley began to tremble, and a multicolored light curtain appeared around it, enveloping the entire valley. Seeing the change in the valley, he smiled faintly. It's already starting. We've become locked in the valley after activating the goddess statue. Zen's eyes flickered with understanding. The reason they had built two star doors here was to have a way out in case they lost. Otherwise, they would be stuck here. No wonder some of the true gods had previously complained that they wouldn't move forward without the star doors. In the worst-case scenario, the star doors could end up saving their lives. The whole valley began to rumble. At the same time, a huge black mass of objects emerged from the 4 entrances around the valley. At the same time, a strange rhythm reached everyone's ears. It sounded like countless people letting out a series of deep breaths at the same time. Black butterflies, Zen said lightly. This is the first wave of attacks. Everyone, be careful. Rime butterflies are ferocious beasts from the dark fire forbidden area. They are not that powerful, but the flames they will turn into after their deaths are very difficult to handle. Make sure you're not surrounded by them, Reginald warned. 4 groups of rime butterflies fluttered in through the 4 entrances of the valley and moved toward the goddess statue in spirals. With their continuous movement, the rhythmic breathing sound became more and more intense. Go. As soon as Reginald gave the order, he rushed out first. The true gods around the goddess statue also rushed toward the rime butterflies, and Zen was no exception. Humph, just rime butterflies. You look as if you're facing a formidable enemy. I've wandered through the dark fire forbidden area several times. These butterflies are not even worth mentioning. Langston smiled coldly and formed a claw with one hand. Then, with red light flashing from his fingertips, he raised the claw above his head and waved it. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Several thin blood lines spiraled in the air like waves, forming countless irregular curves in the air. They formed a thin net that covered the group of rime butterflies in front of him. In a flash, the rime butterflies that had come into contact with the blood lines were cut into pieces, and their broken black wings flew in all directions. At the same time, Langston quickly made his retreat. Swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, the dead rime butterflies behind him exploded into blazing flames. Just as Reginald had said, the rime butterflies weren't very powerful, but after their deaths, flames named Spirit-Burning Fire erupted. Spirit-burning fire could cover a range of several miles, and it was difficult to avoid it. Even a true god could be devoured by the fire. Langston was experienced and chose to retreat immediately to avoid being swallowed by the flames after killing hundreds of rime butterflies. Chapter 1913, The Poisonous Wolf Scorpions. The dark fire forbidden area was a second-grade forbidden area. Most of the true gods present had previous experience of going inside, and they all knew how powerful the rime butterflies could be. Elena, Zen and the others, on the other hand, weren't aware of it at first. After being reminded by Reginald and seeing the other true gods making their moves, they naturally understood that the rime butterflies were very weak. The power came from the spirit-burning fire following the deaths of the rime butterflies. As long as they maintained a certain distance when killing the rime butterflies, they didn't have to worry about a thing. At the same time, an umbrella appeared in Elena's hand. She held onto it tightly. With a cracking sound, the umbrella snapped open. With a flick, she rolled the umbrella in her hand, and it spun at a high speed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Numerous light needles, at least the length of an entire arm, shot out from the umbrella and directed themselves toward the group of rime butterflies, like heavy rain. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Suddenly nailed to the ground, the rime butterflies immediately turned into flames that began to explode. The rising flames spread out, releasing a turbulent heat before rushing toward Elena. Before the flames could reach Elena though, the terrible heat had already burned the beautiful hair just above her forehead. She quickly used the umbrella to block in front of her, keeping the spirit-burning fire as far as possible from her body. At the same time, she gently touched her bangs in front of her forehead, her little face revealing a trace of sadness. Then, she turned her head and glanced in another direction, not too far off. Upon seeing Zen, she immediately exclaimed, "Wow, that was quick." Zen sauntered through the valley. Compared to the others who were trying their best to avoid the rime butterflies, he was much braver. Or, perhaps in the eyes of certain true gods, he wasn't afraid of death at all. As he casually waved his hand, countless golden rays of light suddenly began shooting outward. The golden rays were created from the metal law of the 5 elements godly way. As these golden rays of light gently flashed by his side, a large group of rime butterflies broke into tiny little pieces, and then flames erupted. The flames were extremely powerful, but Zen wasn't afraid in the least. Even if he was sucked into the flames, he wouldn't be burned. And what was more, what came toward him was nothing more than a hot flow. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as the rime butterflies were covered by the golden rays of light, they were crushed into pieces. Zen's extermination of rime butterflies was as efficient as a gust of wind sweeping fallen autumn leaves. Many true gods thought that dealing with the rime butterflies was a piece of cake, but upon seeing Zen's killing technique, they all looked at him, eyes wide with astonishment. The only true gods that even came close to Zen's speed throughout all the valley were the few top-ranked true gods. These top-ranked true gods all had the ability to freely wander within any second-grade forbidden area. Rime butterflies were only common ferocious monsters in a second-grade forbidden area, and thus, no one really paid much attention to them. The top-ranked true gods shuttled directly through the rime butterflies, and everywhere they went, a large group of rime butterflies were killed. They quickly fell to the ground in pieces before the flames rose up in the air moments after. The number of rime butterflies coming out from the valley's 4 entrances was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, there were tens of thousands of them floating out of the valley. But in the face of the true god's powerful strength, no matter how many rime butterflies came through, there was simply no use. Less than 5 minutes later, there were no more butterflies coming out from the 4 entrances. "We're done here," said Reginald. "That wasn't so hard after all," someone said triumphantly. "You're right, that was easy," someone else shouted in agreement. "I've killed at least 50,000 rime butterflies myself alone." Most of the true gods felt relaxed. To them, killing rime butterflies was a piece of cake. They had passed the test with flying colors. Like ordinary people, true gods were prone to having an inflated sense of self. "Don't be foolish, this was only the first wave of attacks. It will become more and more difficult later on," Reginald reminded them as he listened to the others. In addition to Reginald, there were several top-ranked true gods and a few other mid-ranked true gods who had previously explored the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, and they wore cautious expressions on their faces. In fact, it was safe to say that none of them looked relaxed at all. One of them agreed, "He's right. The number of rime butterflies against us just now is 3 times larger than the number of rime butterflies I encountered last time. Judging by the number of rime butterflies alone, we can only imagine that this time, the difficulty might be 3 times bigger," Reginald said in a very serious tone. Zen was listening, and as he heard this, he frowned slightly. For safety escape reasons, the true gods had to prepare 2 star doors every time, which meant passing through this valley was particularly difficult. If they weren't careful of their every step, they risked their lives. If, according to what Reginald had said, the difficulty was increased by 3 times, then he could only imagine what the other waves of attacks had in store for them. Once the first wave was over, they all took a short and well-needed break. As the valley began to tremble anew, the second wave of beasts could be seen pouring from the 4 entrances. Crack, 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 everyone saw countless red scorpions, the size of the soles of their feet, gathering into red tides and surging, crawling in consistent waves forward and making absolutely terrifying sounds. "Poisonous wolf scorpions!" A scream pierced the air. "They are extremely poisonous," someone warned. "Be careful, watch your step. The tails of the poisonous wolf scorpions can shoot poisonous needles." Poisonous wolf scorpions were famous poisonous creatures in the Divine Land. Every scorpion's tail had a fine poisonous needle, which was hidden within the empty space of its tail. When it came into contact with its opponent, Scorpion exerted a strong pressure in its tail and shot a poison needle out. Stranger still, the poisonous wolf scorpions' venom was very unique. After being stabbed by one of their needles, an ordinary divine citizen would only be paralyzed, however, a true god would explode at once. The venom would enter their elixir field at an extremely fast speed, and destroy the godly tile. After that, their entire inner world would be turned upside down, which would eventually cause the inner world to collapse and shatter. As for the warriors below the level of true gods and divine citizens, because they didn't have godly tiles, the venom simply didn't cause them as much damage. There were true gods in the Divine Land who cultivated the poison godly way, and they equally wanted to capture the poisonous wolf scorpions in order to extract their venom. They had this desire because their venom would greatly improve their strength. Unfortunately, the poisonous wolf scorpions' venom became useless once extracted from the scorpions' bodies. Many true gods didn't want to provoke these red scorpions, so when they saw the large number of scorpions rushing toward them, many of the true gods' faces immediately revealed a sense of hesitation. Although the poisonous wolf scorpions were low-level ferocious creatures and weren't very powerful, they would lose their lives if they came into contact with the venom. Who was willing to take the risk? Don't be afraid. Dodging the poisonous wolf scorpions' needles isn't difficult. Just be careful, Reginald said reassuringly. Splash. While the true gods were still standing around hesitating, Zen had already made his move without faltering. As he pushed outward with his hands, a fan-shaped flame spread along the ground, about to advance to the poisonous wolf scorpions. Surprisingly, the scorpions were quite agile, leaping over the fan-shaped flame, and their tails were already raised high toward him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Black poisonous needles spurted out from the tails of thousands of poisonous wolf scorpions, all at the same time. It was a scary and overwhelming sight for everyone. The poisonous needles were extremely thin and hard to distinguish with the naked eye. Without a doubt, they were a threat to the true gods. "Watch out, Thad!" cried Elena, in surprise. "Humph!" Zen snorted and floated upward, like a ghost. Cling, 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 cling. Suddenly, all the needles fell to the ground. "Go to perdition!" Zen shouted fiercely. With a quick flick of his finger, a thick bolt of lightning shot out from the tip. Crack, crack, crack. The thick mysterious lightning continued cracking and turned into millions of flashes of light as thick as a thumb, tightly covering the large area. To Zen's surprise, the poisonous wolf scorpions reacted very quickly, but he believed that they couldn't dodge the lightning, no matter how fast they were. Crack, 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 crack. A few seconds later, the ground was charred, and all the poisonous wolf scorpions had been smashed to ashes by the striking lightning. When the true gods noticed what had happened, they stared at the ground. Their fear of the poisonous wolf scorpions' venom had vanished, now only replaced by greed. As it turned out, once these poisonous wolf scorpions were killed, they could be transformed into divine might coins right there on the ground. Moments ago, Zen had killed thousands of poisonous wolf scorpions, and thousands of divine might coins took their places on the ground beneath their feet. Even though the poisonous wolf scorpions' venom was terrible, killing all these scorpions was now more than worthwhile, especially for so many divine might coins. When Reginald and the other top-ranked true gods saw these divine might coins though, their expressions only became grimmer. Chapter 1914, Nathaniel Dongfang. We have already begun to be rewarded with the divine might coins after only having killed the second wave of beasts. Reginald sighed as he shook his head slightly. "What's wrong with this forbidden land, anyway?" asked another top-ranked true god. It was common for warriors to obtain divine might coins after they killed the beasts in the valley. Certain warriors had even received the supreme treasure of belief. The rewards were usually distributed when the 7th or 8th wave of beasts had been attacked though, and only a few divine might coins appeared. In all, the number was far less than that of the divine might coins they could obtain now. Everyone understood the rules of the Forbidden Land from the past, which meant that the more the rewards were, the higher the difficulty was, and the greater the risk would be. Well, if we can collect good rewards here, then maybe we don't have to go to the second stage of the Time Sea Forbidden Land. We can just give it up later. Reginald shrugged his shoulders and a fierce fighting intent burst out from his body. Reginald equally had a tattoo on his shoulder. It was a large and magnificent blue lion head. As his fighting intent grew more and more intense, the lion head quietly revealed itself with a vivid, lifelike look and emitted a blue light. "Who?" A low hum was heard from the crowd. Without a moment's hesitation, Reginald had rushed into the mass of poisonous wolf scorpions. The needles of the poisonous wolf scorpions were indeed very powerful, but the true gods were usually only attacked when they were caught off guard. The true gods present maintained an extremely high vigilance. With their high speed, it wasn't difficult for them to dodge the poisonous wolf scorpions. As for the top-ranked true gods, on the other hand, such as Reginald, they looked like they were entering an empty, dark place. They rampaged wildly among the poisonous wolf scorpions. Despite the poisonous needles shooting toward Reginald, he didn't even bother dodging them. Before they got anywhere close to him, they were instantly shattered thanks to the fighting intent attached to his body's surface. One poisonous wolf scorpion's death meant one divine might coin. Faced with thousands of poisonous wolf scorpions spewing at them endlessly, the true gods all went crazy. The true gods ignored how powerful the poisonous wolf scorpions were, and they hurried forward in order to attack them. Using their fiercest methods for killing the poisonous wolf scorpions, the true gods were quick to grab the divine might coins off the ground and put them in their space rings. Every time they attacked and killed the poisonous wolf scorpions, they obtained as many divine might coins as they would get in other small lands over the course of several years. No one was willing to pass on such an opportunity. When it came to Zen's speed for killing the poisonous wolf scorpions, he wasn't slow at all. He was the first one to take action and thus to obtain the decisive opportunity. He killed the poisonous wolf scorpions and rushed off into the distance. The poisonous wolf scorpions wrapped themselves up around him like a torrent of blood, shooting poisonous needles directly at him. Clearly though, he didn't care about the poisonous needles in the least. A watermelon-sized thunderball materialized out of nowhere in his hand, and 5 small thunderballs could be seen in the center of it. The small thunderballs collided with each other and piercing sounds rang out, giving the impression they were going to explode at any second. He grabbed the watermelon-sized thunderball and threw it heavily onto the ground. Thud, a round flash of lightning crackled beneath his feet. Within a radius of several hundred feet, all the poisonous wolf scorpions were struck by the bolt. Their bright red shells were instantly charred before turning into a pile of black powder. Flip-flop, flip-flop, hundreds and thousands of divine might coins appeared on the ground in front of him. Zen casually waved his hand in the air, and a wisp of cyan wind blew. In a brief instant, all the divine might coins were rolled up by the wind. Once they were hovering no more than 2 feet above the ground, the coins quickly circled around Zen and finally entered his space ring. 12,000 divine might coins, Zen said, with a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. He flew up and precipitated toward the next pack of poisonous wolf scorpions. Only Zen, Reginald, and other top-ranked true gods dared to play in such a way, especially in this valley. The mid-rank true gods, such as Pascal and Langston, might have had such an ability, but they didn't have the needed confidence in avoiding all the poisonous wolf scorpions, needles. For this reason, they helplessly turned their backs to the goddess statue while attacking the poisonous wolf scorpions, which naturally reduced their speed. Bang! Zen jumped up and once again landed directly in the middle of a group of poisonous wolf scorpions. This time, his stomp also shattered hundreds of poisonous wolf scorpions around him. Using the same method as earlier, he created another thunder ball in his hand, slamming it with all his might onto the ground. The poisonous wolf scorpions disappeared in front of him once again, leaving nothing behind but divine might coins for him to collect. However, this time, before Zen had the chance to bring these divine might coins into his space ring, a sturdy true god suddenly pressed forward and shouted coldly, "Get away." Moments later, a layer of yellow internal momentum appeared on his fist, which was unbelievably solid. He suddenly thrust his fist toward the ground. Rumble. The ground around him began to tremble instantly, and simultaneously, the divine might coins started flowing along the ground toward the mid-rank true god. Then, with a simple wave of his hand, the divine might coins were sucked into his space ring. The series of actions played out extremely fast, so much so that Zen barely had the chance to react. Once the mid-rank true god had finished taking away all the divine might coins, he even tilted his head and glanced at Zen indifferently. "I'm the one who was supposed to kill these poisonous wolf scorpions. You just grabbed at the chance first. I won't blame you for that. Get out of here, ha ha." Zen glanced back at the mid-rank true god carelessly. "Have I failed to convince you? You brat." The true god spat. He glared straight into Zen's eyes with a cold expression on his face. Although Zen had demonstrated nothing but extraordinary strength in the Divine Time Temple, he was still nobody in this mid-rank true god's opinion. It was obvious that he didn't take Zen, a low-rank true god, seriously. Not far away, Reginald and the others were watching the scene frowning, but none of them dared interfere. Zen narrowed his eyes and a faint killing intent flashed across them. Suddenly, he turned his head and jumped up, once again rushing into another group of poisonous wolf scorpions. Crack! The enormous thunder ball spread out, and a huge group of poisonous wolf scorpions turned into carbon powder. What Zen didn't expect though, was that the mid-rank true god would come over to him again. He punched the ground, and the ground trembled again. Once more, the true god took the divine might coins away. It was then that he smugly said, "I forgot to remind you that the divine might coins here also belong to me." Zen ignored the mid-rank true god and continued to press his way into the other groups of poisonous wolf scorpions in order to kill them using the thunderstorm godly way. In fact, he even stopped trying to scoop up the divine might coins, and simply moved on to his next target. This mid-rank true god continued to follow him and accumulate all the divine might coins. At the start of this all, everyone had been anxious to kill the poisonous wolf scorpions and therefore, no one had noticed these two warriors' strange movements. As the number of poisonous wolf scorpions decreased, more and more people began to take notice of this odd scene. Thad has killed plenty of poisonous wolf scorpions, but it seems that all the divine might coins have been taken away by Nathaniel. The guy is even capable of bearing Nathaniel's unreasonable behavior. "I'm impressed," a warrior said frankly. "If not that, then what else was he supposed to do? If he dares resist, Nathaniel will kill him effortlessly. There's no question about that." The true gods whispered amongst themselves. Nathaniel Dongfang was considered the Dongfang clan's talent. In the arena of legends, Nathaniel Dongfang had battled against those who had a higher cultivation base than him. Having won 7 consecutive battles and lost only one, he'd obtained 1.3 million points. If it wasn't for the anonymous man's appearance, then he would have easily been considered the warrior of excellence throughout the competition this time around. Nellie stood with her hands clasped behind her back, staring at Zen with her vigorous eyes. She wanted to see how Zen was going to deal with the situation. On the one hand, Elena and Kelsey were worried and upset. They couldn't help Zen this time. Nathaniel Dongfang was from the Dongfang clan, which was very powerful, and the Han clan didn't dare offend this clan's members. Besides, Nathaniel Dongfang's strength was unfathomable. No one was a match to him. LaQuisha frowned and stared at Zen. Although she pretended to feel indifferently about the situation, she paid close attention to him the entire time. She knew Zen's character well. If Nathaniel Dongfang forced him hard enough, Zen would surely make his move. But Zen was just a low-rank true god, so how could he be of any benefit to the mid-rank true god? As Langston watched the scene, he felt overjoyed. He already had the intention to kill Zen, but he hadn't found the proper time to do so. Now though, this temporarily gathered group was under Reginald's lead. Zen had saved Reginald's life, and if Langston took action to kill Zen, Reginald would definitely prevent him. It was at that moment that Nathaniel Dongfang appeared and bullied Zen. In this type of situation, it was possible that Zen would ultimately suffer greatly. Zen continued to move toward the other group of poisonous wolf scorpions, as though he hadn't seen what Nathaniel Dongfang was doing. After killing yet another group of poisonous wolf scorpions, Nathaniel Dongfang took all the divine might coins away again. Most of the poisonous wolf scorpions throughout the entire valley had been killed, and only a small number of poisonous wolf scorpions were slowly crawling toward the goddess statue. A look of satisfaction suddenly appeared on Nathaniel Dongfang's face. As he turned around with the intention of returning to the goddess statue, someone spoke flatly behind him, "Are you going to leave, just like that?" Chapter 19:15. Earth Godly Way. Hearing this voice, Nathaniel turned around to see Zen. "What did you just say?" Nathaniel grinned ear to ear. He wouldn't take a low-rank true god like Zen seriously. He had entered the Time-Sea Forbidden Land countless times, and as he went on, he came across warriors from the rich and powerful clans on the floating islands, and he took their lives without hesitation. He had even killed some of the holy emperors, disciples and descendants. The wealthy clans on the floating islands kept their mouths shut to keep themselves off his list of victims. When Nathaniel picked up Zen's divine might coins, he took it for granted, because with his strength, he could have killed these poisonous wolf scorpions as easily as Zen had, maybe even more efficiently. He felt that Zen did not have the qualifications to kill the poisonous wolf scorpions like this. The low-rank true gods huddled up under the goddess statue, carefully hunting the poisonous wolf scorpions while the mid-rank true gods stayed a little far away from the statue. Only the top-rank true gods could enter the crowd of the poisonous wolf scorpions and kill them without any scruple. Because of this, the top-rank true gods obtained the most divine might coins among the crowds of people. How did this guy manage to kill the scorpions like a top-rank true god? Nathaniel could definitely gain a foothold among the top-rank true gods, though he wasn't one. In the arena of legends, while going against top-rank true gods, he had been able to win 7 consecutive matches. This showed his strength and versatility, which surprised most. The top-rank true gods were more or less displeased too when they saw what Zen was doing. He took their divine might coins as he was very effective in killing the poisonous wolf scorpions. But they knew that Zen relied on his own ability and courage, so they didn't dare say anything against him. However, what Nathaniel did was somewhat straightforward and surprising to everyone. He completely took away all of Zen's divine might coins, giving Zen a warning to not get them back. If Zen resisted, Nathaniel would have to teach him a lesson. At first, Zen remained silent and just let Nathaniel take them. Nathaniel thought it would stay that way, but Zen couldn't hold his tongue long. "You took all my divine might coins. Are you going to leave like this?" Zen asked again. The corners of Nathaniel's mouth twisted into a small grin. "It's really a joke," he expressed. "As I've said, the poisonous wolf scorpions you killed belong to me. You should be relieved that I haven't planned to get you in trouble after you killed my scorpions. So now, do you still have the balls to ask me for coins?" It was well known that the people of the Dongfang clan were very domineering, and Nathaniel was no exception to this. Many elites of the influential clans on the floating islands, who were present, stayed silent as they listened intently to the two's conversation. Naturally, Reginald was annoyed as he always was. He casually killed some poisonous wolf scorpions and shouted, "Nathaniel, these beasts don't belong to anyone. According to the past rules, whoever kills them will obtain them. You're breaking a ton of rules right now." In the process of killing the poisonous wolf scorpions, all of the true gods were restrained and there was no scramble. A muffled laughter arose from behind Reginald. "Rules? Are you really going to talk about rules with the Dongfang clan? A little naive of you to say, Reginald." Reginald's expression darkened. He turned his head towards Soren. "What on earth do you mean?" As everyone knew, Saran was a top-ranked true god from the Dongfang clan. He had long limbs, and his body was as thin as a bamboo pole. This was the first time he'd spoken since they started. "Do you really take yourself as the leader of the group?" Saran asked sarcastically. Because Reginald was able to successfully distract the time ghosts, this allowed him to lead the group forwards. Right now, everyone followed his orders without another word, but the other top-ranked true gods might have not taken him as seriously as the rest. "For the record, I have never thought of myself as a leader," Reginald pointed out. "It's just that while exploring in the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, we should be united. It will be easier to travel in a group than individually." The other true gods, including many top-ranked true gods, nodded in agreement as they heard his words. At the very least, Reginald had selflessly contributed a star door, which gave a way for anyone to retreat if they wished to. "I'm not targeting you, but you'd better stay out of the Dongfang clan's business," Saran hissed. "If those two little guys want to rip each other's heads off and make a scene, even I wouldn't bother to intervene." His words immediately struck a blow at Reginald, warning him to just leave Zen and Nathaniel alone. Reginald wanted to argue but decided against it. Because Saran said so, he realized that he didn't have any reason to meddle in the first place. In fact, he wasn't afraid of Saran, but he didn't want to make a scene. The thing was, Zen had saved his life before. He knew the characters of the people from the Dongfang clan, and that these guys were merciless, killing anyone who went against them. What if Nathaniel killed Zen? After thinking over his options, he turned to Zen. "Buddy, I will make up for the divine might coins that Nathaniel has taken away from you," he exclaimed. Reginald had also obtained a lot of divine might coins. Thus, it wasn't a big deal for him to give the coins to Zen. Moreover, he knew he still had many more opportunities to redeem himself and gain more coins. He thought his idea was brilliant and Zen would agree without hesitation. "Thank you, Reginald." Zen smiled and cupped his hands in a gesture of gratitude. "I appreciate your kindness." Afterwards, he turned his head and glared at Nathaniel who stood before him. "This dog has been tailing me the whole time to profit himself. It's time he paid me back with interest," he mocked. Zen's words made Nathaniel's blood boil. No one had ever dared to mock him like that, and he burst into laughter. "You, ha ha ha, you must have been born outside of the floating islands, or you wouldn't be such an idiot. Do you know who I am? I guess I'll just have to show you." Nathaniel was still speaking, but Zen cut him off immediately. Just then, his eyes flashed with a sharp light within them. As he stood on the ground, his tiptoe tapped on the ground, and an invisible wave of energy burst forth against Nathaniel. He turned into a gust of wind and came in front of Nathaniel. "The only thing one can learn from you is how to talk trash," he scoffed. "But I don't want to learn that." Whoosh! Zen moved extremely quick. It took only a few seconds for him to suddenly shift from a standstill to an outburst of force. On the contrary, Nathaniel didn't expect that Zen would attack him at all. Zen went for it without hesitation and knocked his elbow across Nathaniel's jaw. Bang! The impact and pain were far beyond what Nathaniel expected. As the force surged across his body, all he could do was stare at Zen in shock. His body kept retreating, rolling down to the ground. Though he was confident enough, Nathaniel knew that Zen's strength was out of this world. Moreover, Zen had also practiced Thunderstorm Godly Way and 5 Elements Godly Way, so he never doubted Zen's capabilities even for a second. In Nathaniel's eyes, such a cultivation base was excellent, but that was all Zen had to offer. He knew that it was no big deal compared to his own abilities. From ancient times until the present day, only a few mid-ranked true gods had been able to fight off top-ranked true gods in the arena of legends. Only a few had been able to win themselves a spot. Nathaniel was one of them. As a mid-ranked true god capable of fighting top-ranked true gods, he was conceited and figured he could take down Zen like killing a bug. "How dare you attack me?" Nathaniel roared and leapt up on his feet. Just then, a thick layer of earthy yellow light emerged on the surface of his body, an internal momentum from the earth godly way. Standing still, he saw a shadow flash in front of him. But to his surprise, Zen approached him again and gave him a punch to the head. Although Zen's punch was extremely powerful, Earth Godly Way's defense was astonishing as it was. Because of Nathaniel's power, the energy released from Zen's punch merely spread under the yellow light from Nathaniel's body and immediately passed to the ground under Nathaniel's feet. Rumble! The ground around Nathaniel began to crickle and crackle as it split apart. People began to shriek as the ground of the whole valley was shaking. The power of the punch spread out and was absorbed by the ground, which caused a minuscule earthquake that no one was expecting. This ability was similar to the power transfer Zen possessed in the universe. As long as Nathaniel was in contact with the ground, he possessed an indestructible defensive power against Zen. He had to get him off the land immediately. "You're all force and hits," said Nathaniel. "It's getting really boring." He laughed to himself. Blood-red flashes began to appear across Zen's eyes, showing that a fierce killing intent was emitting from his body. The murdering godly way. Nellie, who stood far in the distance, stepped forward and gave Zen a firm look. Her eyes spoke wonders, giving off anger and caution with just her expression. If that bloke really used the murdering godly way, he would definitely be the anonymous man. But at this moment, Zen didn't have much to worry about. Blood-breaking bite. Just then, a blood snake suddenly sprang out from Zen's hand and slithered towards Nathaniel. It ignored the earth godly way's internal momentum on Nathaniel's body, biting a small wound in his neck. Before Nathaniel could react, Zen threw out another punch across his face. Bang! With a smacking sound, Nathaniel was tossed 3,000 feet away. Lucky for him, the earth godly way made sure that this punch was still unable to hurt him. However, scarlet blood began spewing out from his neck, pulling out a blood band 3,000 feet long in the valley. It looked striking and frankly, terrifying. Chapter 19:16. Accept him as a disciple. Blood-breaking bite. As Nellie witnessed this, her eyes suddenly widened. She stared at Zen trying to catch her breath as she gradually calmed down. Although she had highly suspected Zen's identity after hearing Rochelle's analysis, she now was sure of it after seeing Zen employ the blood-breaking bite. "Oh, it's you," Nellie murmured. When she was defeated by the anonymous man in the arena of legends, she found herself extremely angry. It came to a point where she even locked herself in her room for an entire day. Her strong and proud personality did not allow her to be defeated, let alone to be defeated by a mere proving godly warrior. At this point, she even didn't care if the anonymous man would join the Dongfang clan or not. Her ultimate goal was to find out his identity, and challenge him once again. This thought was something she couldn't let go. She was full of the desire to know and learn everything about the powerful warrior before her. She was determined that her target was going to be no other than Zen. Nellie thought that her sister, Rochelle, shared the same ideas, but she did not know that Rochelle had also confirmed the other identity of the anonymous man. All she wanted to do was to find out the anonymous man and kill him. What? Is that the blood-breaking bite of Murphy? How did he learn it? What a pity, Nathaniel lost so much blood. Many true gods who were there immediately recognized the blood-breaking bite, which was a kind of Thurgy beyond way. Some also gave looks of confusion towards Nellie. Even the holy beings outside of the Forbidden Land also had a strange expression on their faces. Zen's cultivation was so confusing to most because the blood-breaking bite was derived from the murdering godly way and was also the secret Thurgy beyond way in the Mu clan. How did Zen use such? Nicholas, on the other hand, remained indifferent and silent. It was not so easy for anyone to defeat the disciple of the Dongfang clan. Besides, Nathaniel's cultivation base already exceeded Zen's by one crucial level. Nathaniel stood still as his face flushed into a pale white. He could feel weakness in his body. He clapped his hands, and a small red pill appeared in his hand. With a flick of his finger, the pill shot into his throat and he swallowed without hesitation. Once the pill dissolved, a strong power of blood and vital energy was released throughout him. Just then, his face began to regain color as if the pill had healed him. The pill that he had swallowed was renowned as the green blood pill, a kind of 6 times refined pill. It could instantly replenish the lack of power of blood and vital energy of anyone who ingested it. But for some reason, his face looked a little bit too red and unhealthy because too much blood and vitality had been replenished. "I always thought you were a member of the Han clan," he shouted. "The Mu clan though, I wouldn't have guessed." The Dongfang clan reigned among the alliance of rich clans on the floating islands. On the whole, it wouldn't aim at any clan belonging to the alliance. Because of this, Nathaniel made it a point to keep a good relationship with Langston and Nellie. However, if Zen really came from the Mu clan, why didn't they tell him that in the beginning? Many of Zen's powers were kept hidden, too. The fact that Zen absorbed his opponent's internal momentum with the identity of an anonymous man didn't spread. Nellie also did not tell others about this matter for her own personal reasons. As Nathaniel guessed such things, he became angry and it showed in his grim, disgusted expression. He is not a member of the Mu clan. He is from the Han clan, and he is the anonymous man. As for the blood-breaking bite that he has mastered, he learned it from me as we fought. Nellie shouted. Crack, crack, there were still a handful of true gods in the valley who didn't bother or care about what was happening. To them, it was enough that they beat the rest of poisonous wolf scorpions into pieces and obtained some divine might coins to get them by. Now, most of the true gods turned to get a good look at Zen. Except for Laquisha, Kelsey and Elena, other true gods were surprised because they had no clue about his identity. I recall that the anonymous man is supposed to be a proving godly warrior. But this guy is a low-rank true god. He must have broken through to the higher cultivation level after the re-ranking of the floating islands. This explains his extraordinary strength. When he was a mere proving godly warrior, he even defeated Nelly. With his current cultivation base, there is no doubt that he can confidently go against Nathaniel. Where did he come from? What is his background? Wow, there are indeed many remarkable talents among the youth of the Han clan. Can someone please explain how this clan can cultivate such a formidable talented warrior? On and on the true gods whispered and rambled among themselves, trying to find answers to questions that seemed to have no end. Outside of the time-sea forbidden land, the holy beings began to look at Zen with interest again. So he's the anonymous man. Aha! Clark exclaimed. Samuel, your Han clan is quite blessed to have such a talented warrior on your side. If it weren't for him, your clan would have dropped out of the top 10 in the ranking list days ago. He then laughed. Before the floating islands' points were counted up, Laquisha was suddenly able to obtain about 2 million more points. She shifted the whole ranking of the floating islands. However, no one was dumb. Everyone knew that the anonymous man didn't want to expose his identity, so he deliberately lost to Laquisha. For sure, the anonymous man must have come from the Han clan. Samuel also stared at Zen and said, he is from our Han clan's ancestral land, but I am quite certain that he is not a direct descendant of the clan. Really? Clark gasped in surprise. How did the true god from an unknown clan reach this level? This is even more surprising. He muttered. When Nicholas's eyes flashed, he opened his mouth to speak but hesitated. Samuel beat him to it and said, Holy Nicholas, I have heard that the Dongfang clan seems to have some interest in the anonymous man and wants to recruit him to the Dongfang clan's floating island. I didn't know the identity of the anonymous man before, and now I know clearly about that. If you will accept him, this warrior should be honored nonetheless. Many holy beings and demi-holy beings who were there were puzzled at Samuel's comment, and even felt a hint of disdain for him. Rich clans on the floating islands always attached great importance to talents in their own clans. Everyone knew that a warrior like the anonymous man was indeed a rare talent. Samuel wanted to give the same talent to others even though it was not easy for the Han clan to have such a talent. It seemed that he intended to use the anonymous man to please Nicholas. As a holy being who ruled the universe, he too was a crafty and reckless fellow. With a hint of rage in her eyes, Joy bit her lips and felt humiliated. Although she knew from the very beginning that Samuel would definitely hand Zen over to others, she was still furious and thought that he would disgrace the Han clan as he tried to please Nicholas in front of all the holy beings like that. Fortunately, Zen had two identities. Exposing his first identity was not a big deal to him because after exploring the time-sea forbidden land, Zen would go to the Everest Spirit Mountain. He knew that once he got through this, no one would be able to reach him. If Zen's second identity was exposed, then he knew that he'd be put into a big mess. Nicholas smiled and said, You're right. I asked Pearl to invite his guy in person the other day, but he refused me. I have planned to send people to the Han clan again after the astronomical transit day, but I didn't expect to see him here. For some reason, Pearl said that he was very resistant to our Dongfang clan. Young people are always a little rebellious and arrogant, Samuel responded with a laugh. This kid is not clear about the strength of the Dongfang clan. If he finally comes to terms with that, he will finally be willing to stay in the Dongfang clan. As these conversations went on, many holy beings despised him even more. No matter how powerful Nicholas was, those clans and holy beings that were supported by him would keep their basic dignity. At this point, there was no need for a holy being to flatter another being in this way. Nicholas, however, seemed to be quite satisfied with the attitude of Samuel. He smiled faintly and uttered, That's right. If this young man comes to my clan, I will accept him as my personal disciple. Chapter 1917, Freeze the Scorpions. Becoming a holy being's disciple in the divine land was an unparalleled honor. It was a rare thing. Even the biological children of a holy being didn't necessarily have a chance. And Nicholas was the kind to accept a disciple only once in a blue moon. This meant that Nicholas truly thought highly of Zen, wanting to cherish his talent. With a slight smile, Samuel replied, It's of great fortune for him to be accepted as a disciple. He will be overjoyed once he hears the news when he leaves the time-sea forbidden land. Joy and the other holy beings only rolled their eyes at Samuel's words. As a proving godly warrior, Zen could win over 30 times consecutively. What was more, he had already defeated Nelly, who ranked first among the low-rank true gods. It could be said that the anonymous man was already unbeatable among the low-rank true gods. Who wouldn't want to take him in as a disciple, so talented a person as he was? One could assume that if Zen were there to choose, any holy being would take him in gladly. In order to please Nicholas, Samuel never cared about his self-esteem. Joy cast a sidelong glance at Samuel before sighing inwardly. Though she had always admired him, the arrogant man was no bowing to another holy being. Nicholas was indeed powerful. The union of the wealthy clans he dominated had an absolute advantage in the Hall of Holy Beings. But there were not only the union of the wealthy clans and the Dongfang clan on the Time Sea. The Moon clan and the Sword clan were not afraid of him. But I'm worried that Nathaniel will be too angry and he may kill the child by mistake, Nicholas said, looking to the distance. He was not pretending that he was worried, since he truly did want to take Zen in as a disciple. Nicholas had an estimate of Zen's strength. At this stage, Zen could probably defeat an ordinary mid-rank true god. But Nathaniel was the top figure among the mid-rank true gods. Even if he was hurt by the blood-breaking bite of the murdering godly way, if Nathaniel really took it seriously, it was possible that Zen would be no match for him. I'll send Soren a message and have him control the situation. I won't let them take the fight too far, Nicholas said quietly. To the holy beings, battles between the true gods were like mere children's fights. In the valley, the goddess statue looked up to the sky while the atmosphere in the valley grew serious. It's quite interesting. Nathaniel stared at Zen for a moment and continued, I didn't expect you to be the anonymous man who participated in the battles of challenging higher-level warriors. You've set quite the record for 33 consecutive wins. Good for you. That day, my sister invited you to join our clan, but you turned her down quite bluntly. She lost her temper and almost destroyed her own palace. Pearl's looks were deceiving. While she appeared weak and mild, she was actually highly competitive. Naturally, she was furious when Zen refused her so forcefully. After leaving the arena of legends, she had indeed caused a great commotion in the Dongfang clan. You have good talent, but it's a pity to see how blind you are, Nathaniel remarked, shaking his head. In that case, I'll help Pearl vent her anger. I will kill you today. As he announced this, layers of earthy yellow internal momentum began spreading out from his body. The rich internal momentum of the earth godly wave from his legs transformed him and the very earth into a whole. It was now impossible to separate them. At this time, he held a black axe suddenly in his hand. Not too far away was Zen, narrowing his eyes at the scene. Since he knew the battle was inevitable, he had no intention of backing down. With his identity exposed, there was no need for him to hide anything. Faint purple mist gushed out from his body. It was the internal momentum of the purple aura godly way. He then extended his hands, making wisps of invisible force spread out, slowly condensing until they turned into 4 long swords. Appearing before him were the Buddha Emperor sword, the Heavenly Tooth sword, the Long Vine sword, and the Grandson sword. The rumor is true. 4 gods killing swords. These 4 swords were summoned by power shaping. How on earth did he make it? The news that Zen had formed 4 illusory swords with the purple aura godly way spread like wildfire. While most true gods believed that Zen knew how to use the gods killing sword array, very few believed that he could use 4 illusory swords. That was something only Joy could do, people believed. Or it could be said that only the demi-holy beings and the holy beings had the qualification to use it. To achieve this, one must have the cross-world theurgy to extract the 9 stars' power from their inner world. It was impossible for a proving godly warrior to make it. The low-rank true gods couldn't make it. Even a consummate true god couldn't make it. But when the scene unfolded, everyone was left stunned. They had no choice but to believe. Soren, your brother may not be able to win, and after these poisonous wolf scorpions are wiped out, the next wave of attacks will also come. Is this a suitable place for them to fight? Reginald said helplessly. A playful look came over Soren's face. Hearing Reginald's words, he laughed out loud. That's not a big deal at all. I'll take care of it. His body then flew towards the other side. There were several true gods below him cleaning up all the remaining poisonous wolf scorpions. Stop, all of you, Soren called out. Thinking that Soren would take the rest of the poisonous wolf scorpions as his own, the true gods stopped one by one. Naturally, they didn't want to compete with the top-ranked true gods, especially those of the Dongfang clan. After expelling the true gods, Soren made no move to kill the scattered poisonous wolf scorpions. Instead, he blew gently at the poisonous wolf scorpions, sending out an extremely cold breath, immediately freezing them. They weren't killed, only frozen. According to the goddess statue Valley's rules, only after the last poisonous wolf scorpion was killed would there be another round of fierce attacks. So long as these frozen poisonous wolf scorpions were kept alive, the next wave of beasts wouldn't come. When Reginald saw the scene, his expression grew dissatisfied. Such a method was usually used to deal with the final attacks of the beasts in the valley. Because the attacks of the beasts would only grow fiercer and more powerful, the true gods would grow just more exhausted. Everyone would try freezing one or two vicious beasts for some valuable rest time. But now, Saran used this method specifically for his brother's battle with Thad. It was too selfish of him. After Zen summoned the 4 swords, he rushed to Nathaniel, as fast as the wind, without hesitation. After being hit by the blood-breaking bite, Nathaniel made no movement and instead stood still, carrying the black axe on his shoulder like a mountain. Seeing Zen rush over, he called out, "Come on." With a sudden wave of his hands, the black axe turned into circles of black shadows swirling crazily in his hands. While the axe was as heavy as a mountain, it was a feather in Nathaniel's hand. As the heavy axe spun at high speed, it seemed to tear the surrounding space apart. Nathaniel is using the power of the earth. The earth godly way has an extremely horrible power. After it is integrated with the earth, it can use the earth in resisting the opponent's attack. He is one of the elites. When all the others saw that Nathaniel was using his full strength, they were all left shocked. It was no wonder that with the cultivation base of a mid-rank true god, Nathaniel could defeat 7 top-rank true gods in a row. Is he powerful? As Zen quickly approached, the sense of fighting in his eyes grew even stronger. Buddha Emperor Sword, kill him. Then, the sword rushed right at Nathaniel ruthlessly. Chapter 1918, Rain of Blood. The Buddha Emperor Sword charged straight at Nathaniel's head at lightning speed. But he spun his black axe wildly, making it seem as though he was carrying an airtight shield. Soon, the invisible Buddha Emperor Sword collided with the black axe. Bang! With a rather dull sound, the black axe in Nathaniel's hand steadily blocked the attack. His heavy axe was still trembling when Zen's Buddha Emperor Sword collapsed. "You're not even qualified yet," Nathaniel sneered. But Zen remained calm as the pieces of the Buddha Emperor Sword suddenly gathered into form where it collapsed. It was only 2 feet away from Nathaniel and it grew more solid and thicker as it condensed. Then, it slashed at Nathaniel so fast that it was impossible for him to defend himself this time. Most impressive was that Zen could somehow freely shape the illusory sword again. Normally, the strength source Zen used to shape the 4 swords occupied only a small part of the 9 divine stars' power, but Zen could adjust it as he pleased. A few moments earlier, Zen had seen the great power of the black axe and chose not to fight it head-on. The sword collapsing from Nathaniel's counterattack was by design. As soon as Nathaniel let down his guard, Zen suddenly released 50% of his strength source. The power of the Buddha Emperor Sword immediately intensified when it was shaped once again, making it clear how much greater its speed and strength had gotten. Feeling the great power before him, Nathaniel narrowed his eyes slightly as a smile appeared on his face. Then, the Buddha Emperor Sword came slashing at his head. Crack! The invisible Buddha Emperor Sword cut his neck with a dull sound. If it were any other true god, their head would have fallen to the ground at that very moment. But a brownish-yellow light flashed across the surface of Nathaniel's body and forcefully blocked the Buddha Emperor Sword's slash. Simultaneously, a crack appeared on the ground beneath his feet. Nathaniel used the earth godly way to transfer the slashing power of Zen's Buddha Emperor Sword to the ground. The crack on the ground continued to extend until it spread towards Zen. When it reached the ground right under Zen's feet, an invisible force suddenly shot out and charged towards him. It happened to be exactly the power of the Buddha Emperor Sword. After being absorbed by Nathaniel's Thurgi, it flowed along the ground and was returned to Zen. Zen reacted rapidly and ordered the Grandson Sword to set up its defense from under him. This Grandson Sword mainly served as Zen's thickest defense. With a crisp sound, it pressed down and blocked the invisible force. But Zen frowned slightly. The earth godly way was similar to the power transfer skill he mastered in the universe. He had inherited the will of the entire universe and could transfer any sort of attack to any corner of the universe. But it seemed that Nathaniel could transfer the power only to the earth, able to return any attacks through the ground. Joy's illusory sword is indeed worthy of its reputation. "Please, go on," Nathaniel said mockingly with a relaxed smile. The comment made Zen snort as he snapped his fingers. The Buddha Emperor Sword, the Heavenly Tooth Sword, and the Long Vine Sword surrounded Nathaniel and took turns attacking. Indeed, the attacks Nathaniel received could be transferred back through the ground, but Zen believed that there must be a limit. So long as the limit was exceeded, the yellow internal momentum protecting him would eventually be dissipated. Swoosh, swoosh, Swoosh! The three swords started flying constantly around Nathaniel, just like a pack of wolves surrounding sheep on the grassland. As long as there was a sign of a chance, they'd make a lethal bite at him. At the start of the battle, Nathaniel used the black axe to defend himself, but Zen's illusory swords were very flexible. Even if he destroyed the swords, they would soon take shape again and swing at him ferociously. So he decided to give up defending himself directly and instead concentrated on constantly returning the attacks he received. Boom! Cracks were constantly appearing on the ground under Nathaniel's feet from the power of Zen's attacks. Nathaniel merely threw them all back at Zen. While moving around Nathaniel and avoiding the cracks, Zen continued controlling the three long swords, slashing at Nathaniel constantly. The battle between the two fell into a deadlock. But Nathaniel clearly had it easier. He only needed to stand still and keep returning Zen's power back to him. He was rather curious to see how long Zen could hold on. Still, Zen seemed just as unhurried. Since his identity had been exposed, he no longer had to hide any other skill, save for the emotion-closing godly way. Zen had also recorded the Earth Godly Way on the Infinity Ruler. But ordinary Theurgy of Earth Godly Way could only borrow the Earth's power. Nathaniel's skill of transferring attacks must have been a Theurgy Beyond Way that was created by the Dongfang clan. Because Zen had mastered the power transfer skill himself, he knew that it was indeed powerful. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zen's eyes flashed quietly with two small golden rings. He began analyzing the internal momentum scattered on the surface of Nathaniel's body. This Theurgy is indeed ingenious. Soon, Zen understood the principles of this Theurgy Beyond Way. However, it is still incomparable to the power transfer skill of the universe. Nathaniel can transfer the attacks to the ground within a 1,000-foot radius. I only just learned this skill from him, so I can transfer to the range of 20 to 30 feet. After Zen gained a full understanding of the Theurgy Beyond Way, the cracks on the ground around Nathaniel grew abundant. The ground under his feet seemed to have been plowed through, becoming softer and softer. It had all been turned into a plot of broken land. It's my turn now. With a slight smile, Zen waved his hand. The long vine sword and the heavenly tooth sword immediately plunged into the soil. Noticing Zen's grin, Nathaniel was rather stunned, wondering what his next move would be. In an instant, a circular crack suddenly appeared within a 1-foot range around Nathaniel. He felt a tremor under his feet as the entire piece of the ground beneath him rose abruptly into the sky. Your Theurgy is indeed powerful. So long as you are connected to the ground, you're practically invincible. But under the effect of the blood-breaking bite, you can't move freely. Once I cut off the connection between you and the ground, things will get even more interesting. With his hand raised high, Zen explained calmly. Under the piece of ground Nathaniel was currently standing on, the long vine sword created countless vines, lifting the whole piece of earth into the air. At the same time, some vines crossed the ground and firmly wrapped around Nathaniel's legs. With that, Nathaniel was sent flying into the sky. And since he moved vertically, the wound on his neck from the blood-breaking bite began bleeding. After finishing his words, Zen gently waved his right hand. The long vine sword carried Nathaniel up rapidly, making him hover in the sky above the valley. Simultaneously, his blood spurted from the wound, falling like heavy rain. Chapter 1919. Saran was shocked. Nathaniel had swallowed a green blood pill before, which was known to be quite potent. Generally speaking, a consummate true god could quickly replenish their blood vitality if it was depleted after they'd taken the pill, let alone Nathaniel, a mid-rank true god. The green blood pill worked constantly in his elixir field. It replenished his blood vitality and made it flourish even more. The current scene caused the people in the valley to be shocked when they saw it. Zen lifted Nathaniel in midair. His body swayed with the wind as blood continued to gush out from it. A rain of bright red showered the valley like crazy, while numerous true gods tried to dodge the liquid. Nathaniel is bleeding heavily. The blood in his body has almost dried out, I guess. Not necessarily. He just ate a green blood pill to replenish blood vitality. But if it weren't for that pill, he would have become a mummy. The green blood pill continued to work its magic amidst the rain of blood, and more people became stunned. Meanwhile, Nellie's hands were behind her back as her round eyes stared at Zen. Her usually sharp face became the slightest bit soft when she smiled. Although she mainly practiced the murdering godly way, she never thought that the blood-breaking bite could be used like this. The blood-breaking bite was indeed a good skill, but it was usually used to prevent one's opponent from escaping. Now, Zen completely depended on the blood-breaking bite and planned to drain Nathaniel's blood. The green blood pill did constantly replenish Nathaniel's blood vitality, but the speed of his blood loss was much faster than the rate at which it was being refilled. Soon enough, Nathaniel's face was gradually drained of color, until he was as white as a sheet. He tried to cut off the intangible vines at his feet, but the vines from the long vine sword clung tightly on the lower part of his body. In order to cut those transparent and intangible vines off, he was afraid that he might have to sacrifice his lower body. His achievements in the earth godly way were almost invincible like Zen had said, and he still had several kinds of theurgy that he had yet to show. Now, however, he had lost his chance to turn the tables because Zen had locked him in his grip. More and more blood spurted out from his body, and he felt like his whole being was slipping away. Panic filled his eyes. He would die if he didn't stop bleeding. On the other hand, the holy beings outside the time-sea forbidden land were amused and shocked by such an astonishing sight. Nicholas stared at Nathaniel for a while, and then told Soren using his life vitality, "Soren, stop that guy. Don't kill him, or he'll kill Nathaniel." Earlier, Nicholas had told Soren to stay out of Zen and Nathaniel's fight. Soren would never go against Nicholas's words. He would also never take action even if he had to watch Zen kill Nathaniel, his brother. But since Nicholas now told him to stop Zen, he quickly nodded. Before he could do anything, however, Reginald, who stood beside him, suddenly stretched his hand out and blocked his way. "You said you wouldn't do anything," he said in a serious tone. Reginald's eyes burned fierily. Zen had saved his life. He couldn't possibly watch Soren fight against Zen. If Soren really wanted to kill Zen, Reginald would surely make a move. Soren just smiled and did not care about Reginald. "Don't worry, I'm not going to kill him. The Holy Emperor of our clan told me to stop the fight. He wants to accept that as his disciple. I won't dare kill that guy, or else, the Holy Emperor of our clan will never forgive me." When he was done, he flew straight towards Zen. Doubt clouded Reginald's mind as he didn't know if Soren was telling the truth or just lying. He still followed Soren though. If Soren tried to kill Zen, Reginald would stop him. Meanwhile, Zen continued to wield the long vine sword. He dragged the earth under Nathaniel's feet, and then swayed left and right in the air. A stream of Nathaniel's blood splashed on the ground like red ink. Puff! At that moment, goosebumps rose on his skin at the sudden blast of cold wind, and he almost subconsciously dodged to the side. The person who came for him was surprisingly fast. As soon as he turned around, he felt someone tightly grasp his hand, where he felt an extremely cold aura came from. The aura went into his arm. Just then, Zen finally noticed that the man in front of him was Soren, Nathaniel's elder brother. "Stop. If you kill a member of the Dongfang clan, you will never have a chance to get away with it alive," said Soren calmly. He had a firm grip on Zen's arm, which won his brother a little bit of rest. Most of Nathaniel's blood, however, was gone and he couldn't move smoothly. He stood there weakly, still entangled with the long vine sword. "He robbed my divine might coins and wanted to kill me. He deserves to die," Zen said just as coolly. "But you can't kill him because I'm here," Soren replied with a faint smile. He increased his hold on Zen's arm. The chilling sensation flowed even more into it and immediately froze half of Zen's body. Puff! Suddenly, a pure white flame flew out of Zen's arm. After the ice soul flame appeared, it quickly burned through Soren's hand. The ice soul flame. Soren was surprised. That type of ice flame was known to be a kind of extremely powerful theurgy. It was driven by chaotic energy, which gave it its terrifying power. An ordinary low-rank true god could barely resist the ice soul flame, and it was a huge deal for even a mid-rank true god. Then again, Soren was a top-rank true god. His eyes glowed and his arm emitted white ice crystals. The ice crystals turned into countless ice bugs and rapidly rushed towards Zen's ice soul flame. There was an incredible reaction of two very different extremely cold powers as soon as the ice bugs made contact with the ice soul flame. It turned out that the ice bugs quickly absorbed the immensely cold power in the ice soul flame. The tiny ice bugs, which were originally as thin as toothpicks, immediately swelled after they absorbed the ice soul flame. After they had consumed a certain amount, they all fell to the ground and quickly turned into small ice cocoons. As for Zen, he continued to release the ice soul flame without stop. At the same time, Soren urged the ice bugs to devour the ice soul flame. The cocoons that fell on the ground soon broke apart, then the things inside them turned into snow-white ice butterflies. The butterflies had translucent wings with beautiful patterns made up of icy crystals. All of the ice butterflies flew and gathered behind Soren. Apparently, he controlled all of those ice butterflies. The air around them grew colder as the more ice soul flame Zen released, the more butterflies Soren created, which was in Soren's favor. "Don't waste your energy anymore. Let me give you the divine might coins, okay?" Soren said consolingly. Zen's eyes glinted in the light. His brows were furrowed as he sighed deeply. It was truly difficult for him to fight against a top-ranked true god with his current strength. Soren noticed the change in Zen's expression and smiled. Maybe we will be family in the future. Brother, kill that idiot, someone shouted. It was Nathaniel, who had finally regained his strength and quickly turned against Zen once again. Soren, however, mentally cursed him for his words. My idiotic brother. Anger began to fill Zen as he glared at Nathaniel with a malicious aura in his eyes. An extremely violent energy started to brew in his body. He couldn't fully control the raging energy. Hundreds of streams of internal momentum intertwined and gave off a terrifying aura. The aura didn't really spread that far, so Nathaniel, who was in midair, wasn't aware of it. Neither was Reginald, who was 10 feet behind Soren. Only Soren was the closest to Zen, and there was a hint of true fear in his eyes when he smelled the rabid momentum. He immediately let go of Zen's arm and retreated at an outstanding speed, way back to the side of the valley. His legs stood upright on the mountain wall and his whole body was on high alert. He looked wide-eyed at Zen, as if he had seen a ghost. Chapter 1920, Dark Crows. Reginald had originally trailed behind Soren because he was afraid that the latter might kill Zen. All his senses were on high alert in case such a thing would happen. To his utter surprise, Soren seemed to have sensed a natural enemy in front of him and suddenly flew backwards. He kept a huge distance from Zen. If it wasn't for the valley that blocked Soren's way, no one would know where he was now. The others were also confused and didn't know what on earth Soren, a top-ranked true god, was afraid of. Was he afraid of Zen? But how? Meanwhile, Zen really could not control the raging energy in his inner world. He didn't even have a way to activate it. He had tried many times back in the secret time room, but to no avail. Having been threatened by Soren, Zen had no choice but to activate the raging energy. If he forced that ball of energy out of his body in a short period of time, then there would be a quick but terrifying explosion. Yet, he never thought that Soren would react that way. Soren remained glued on the cliff of the valley. The fear in his eyes eventually dissipated, but he still remained highly vigilant. He had quite sharp and powerful perception. Furthermore, he could always trigger a strong fighting instinct, especially in the face of life and death. It was one of his talents, and at that moment, his instincts told him that Zen would kill him if he didn't run away. Generally speaking, he would launch his most powerful counterattack to kill his opponent when such a feeling arose. Nicholas, however, requested that he refrain from hurting Zen. Thus, he was left with no choice but to leave Zen's vicinity and run. Of course, the others did not know that. Until now, he still couldn't understand how the strange internal momentum in Zen's body came out and why it made him feel so stressful. As for Zen, he turned to Nathaniel again once Soren was out of the way. A shiver coursed through Nathaniel's spine when he saw that Zen seemed to have scared his brother away. He was weak all over and Zen's long vine sword still bound him, which left him no room for resistance. If he was pale before, now his skin was the color of a dead person. If Zen really killed Nathaniel, Nicholas, who was outside the forbidden area, would not let him go. As Zen thought about it, his right hand suddenly trembled. Crack! The frozen ice shell on the surface of his right hand quickly broke apart, then he stretched his hand out and gently waved it downwards. This caused the long vine sword to drag Nathaniel down from the air. As Nathaniel descended, a small amount of blood from his wound caused by the blood-breaking bite gushed out. While Zen slowly walked towards Nathaniel, Soren kicked the mountain wall hard. Then, he flew upwards and landed gracefully on the side like a majestic falcon. At the same time, Reginald also calmly stood on the other side and tried to convince Zen by saying, "Thad, don't be impulsive. If he is willing to return the Divine Might coins to you, then we can let him go." "Nathaniel, give the Divine Might coins back to Thad," Soren ordered. He was starting to have a headache. All he wanted right now was to quickly end this matter. He knew that Nicholas kept an eye on him, so he couldn't do anything to Zen. Zen was a strange man. Of course, he would be humiliated if Zen defeated him. He wouldn't have any face to show to the Dongfang clan if that happened. "Give my Divine Might coins back," Zen coldly said and stretched out a hand to Nathaniel. The air between them was filled with tension. Nathaniel refused to give up. He looked at his elder brother for help and wondered why he was afraid of Zen. Soren was an elite warrior among the top-ranked true gods, and to kill Zen would be a piece of cake for him. "Give the Divine Might coins back to Thad and apologize to him," Soren commanded. "I can return them to him, but I don't think I have to apologize." Anger and humiliation were written all over Nathaniel's face. When did the Dongfang clan ever make an apology? He thought. "Do as I say," Soren bellowed. Needless to say, Nathaniel was sullen at the sight of his angry brother. He fumbled around his space ring with some difficulty and brought out the divine might coins. Before the whole fiasco had started, Zen had exterminated as many poisonous wolf scorpions as the top-ranked true gods had killed. Nathaniel took out all the divine might coins that he had taken from Zen and piled them up like a small mountain. It was likely that the total number of coins was over 100,000. Zen gently waved his hand, and an invisible force surrounded all the divine might coins. He shook his hand and the force was poured into his space ring. His method to keep the divine might coins looked simple, but in reality, he had transformed his power into an invisible funnel. The funnel was near Zen, and that skill had the same principle as the god's killing sword array. This guy is really able to separate his strength source from his body at will. I wonder how he managed to master the cross-world theurgy. Both Soren and Reginald thought to themselves as they watched. After Zen was done, he turned around and walked down to the goddess statue. I don't need an apology from such a guy, he said to Soren plainly. How dare you? Nathaniel shouted angrily at Zen's retreating back. Zen, however, never looked back. Meanwhile, Kelsey couldn't control her excitement after the whole incident had ended. Thad, you are so awesome. She praised and clapped her hands. Her eyes were full of admiration while Zen trooped back to them. What more couldn't he do? The disciples of the wealthy clans on the floating islands always had similar conflicts, but few of them could intimidate the disciples of the Dongfang clan like what Zen did. Nathaniel was fuming mad at Zen, but he could do nothing to him. Kelsey felt that Zen was really powerful. He is so awesome, it's good that Soren hasn't tried to side with his brother. Otherwise, everything would have gone worse, Elena said worriedly. Elena and Laquisha knew Zen better than Kelsey. They knew that he still had a chance to defeat Nathaniel, but they didn't expect that the latter was no match for Zen at all. What the two of them worried about the most was Soren joining the fight. If Soren wanted to kill Zen, no one could stop him except the top-ranked true gods like Reginald. Moreover, whether or not Reginald was willing to sacrifice his life for Zen was another question. It's okay, I just want to get my divine might coins back, Zen said with a smile. On the other side, Laquisha was relieved now that Zen was safe, but Langston, who stood next to her, looked more miserable. Some true gods noticed that the dispute had ended, and they had killed all the remaining poisonous wolf scorpions together. After all of the scorpions had died, another tremor shook the valley. The beasts of the third wave are coming for us. Everyone, disperse. Don't stand together. According to previous experience, the beasts of the third wave are usually birds, Reginald warned in a loud voice. As soon as he finished speaking, black objects flew out from the four entrances of the valley. In addition, loud croaking sounds echoed throughout the area. Just like Reginald had said, the third wave of beasts that were going to attack them were indeed birds. The black birds were called the dark crows. They were usually found in the dark fog forest, which was a fourth-grade forbidden area. The dark crows flew at a highly fast speed, but they did not attack the true gods in the valley. Instead, they went straight to the goddess statue. It was known that if the goddess statue was destroyed, everyone would fail and lose their chance to enter the second stage of the Time Sea Forbidden Land. Therefore, all of them immediately launched into action. Stop those dark crows. Shoot them down.